Alright. Okay. Hi, everyone. Let's see. Whoa, I'm loud. Why am I loud? Where am I loud? There I'm loud. Okay. Sorry, I got a lot of different screens going on right now. I don't normally stream this early in the morning. So, in fact, I only got like 5 hours of sleep last night, which is weird because I'm super energized. And, it's kind of funny that this is all happening the way it's happening this morning, and just a lot of interesting things have come up. And, with right now, like my family, they're sick, they have a cold. Thankfully, it's just a cold. We did COVID tests, so good to go. I'm still quarantining from them in my office right now. I love them very much, but typically on Saturdays I spend a lot of time with my family. So that's kind of the thing. Finn, thank you for subscribing. Did not expect that. That'll actually help out Marine a lot in the channel. But yeah, today's such a weird day for me. So people, like, half my family's sick, and then I get hit with a bunch of like news and other things and like analytics and all that came and hit my way. And I'm gonna have coffee with y'all this morning. So, I already had one cup, but this is my second cup, and it's decaf. I can't drink caffeine, but I still love coffee, and it helps me wake up. I don't know what it is about it. So I kind of just want to talk with y'all about a lot of different things today. It's going to be a very interesting chat. So this is like pretty rare for me to do these types of chats. Like, I've talked about business in the past, talked about all those things, but like not to this extent. Like, we're going to go through like a business model, we're going to go through marketing, we're going to talk about crowdfunding campaigns, we're going to talk about everything under the sun that has to do with business and marketing of tabletop RPGs, the state of crowdfunding, the state of tabletop RPGs in the industry. We're just going to let it all flow out. And normally I keep these pretty quiet. I don't normally share a lot of this information with the wider public, I should say. Like what's the word for it? Constituents? I don't know. My peers know. My peers know, and I share in those types of guilds and things like that. But I have a strong conviction to share these things with all of you today, because some of them are going to deeply affect you in many ways, as well as myself. Specifically because I guess I have a heart for the indie. So whether you're third-party publishing indie, or like for WotC D&D, or Pathfinder, Paizo, or maybe like Blades in the Dark, like with Evil Hat, or Fate, or maybe you are making your own system, your own setting, or whatever, what have you, right? All of this applies to everyone, including myself. So I really think it's important. It also applies to like streamers, content creators, anyone who monetizes their stuff in any shape or form. Even if you're a revenue share platform or you're a co-op, this is going to affect you as well. So there's a lot to talk about today, and I kind of hope that you stay tuned in, because it is that important. Fen says, all coffee is good coffee. Heck yes, I agree. Cheers to you, my friend. Still kind of warm. No, it's very warm. It's hot. So we're going to kind of dive into this, and I know there's a few of you that are watching right now, so if you watch the VOD later, I would suggest sharing this with people too. Share the stream right now with people, tweet it out, put it on Facebook, because I'm about to give you some fun drops, and by fun, good and bad. There's a bad kind of fun here. So, and in a way, I'm kind of like sounding an alarm. So, just to kind of share things with y'all are going to see like some of my research process, some of my Googling process. Y'all are about to see some of the things I'm about to put together for direct pre-order models. And we are going to talk about Kickstarter for sure. Kickstarter is not in a good state right now. So I'll hook you with that. If you do have friends that are in business marketing, publishers, content creators, writers, artists, whatever, this is the stream to watch. This is not planned at all. This is completely off the cuff. But I was like, I gotta do this. I have to share with everyone. So, I'll have some announcements too for Smunchy Games. Don't get me wrong. Like, because I mean, I'm in this business. I'm in this industry, and normally I think I like to stay more. I like to play things more to the chest personally, just because there's a lot of weird information out there, and there's information like board game Facebook groups and on Twitter and on Instagram, which is weird because mostly it's pictures, but on Instagram, like Reddit, like there's a ton of advice everywhere. But I want to tell you that this is coming from someone like myself who has run multiple companies, not just in the tabletop or games industry. This is coming from someone, like, again, this is my experience. I've helped other companies with millions of projects and make millions of dollars, sometimes billions. So, like, what I'm about to share with you, it's a pretty big deal. So, I hope it helps you, though. I hope anything like helps you that I'm going to share with you today. You have some kind of takeaways. We're just in a very weird state right now. So yes, we may even talk about the shipping crisis that's happening. And it's weird because, like, while the shipping, everyone keeps on talking about, like, shipping as in it's piling up. That's true. There's much more to that no one's talking about. So, Fed says, still kind of warm, burns tongue, very warm. Yep. Oh, hey, Bear. Oh, I miss you. Is Kickstarter gonna Kickstarter the bucket? It might after some of this info I share with y'all. So we'll find out. These are my readings. This is what I'm finding, and these are also things that are happening to me real time right now. So, as you all know, I'm very transparent about, like, when it comes to these business things. The thing for me, so let's go on ahead and just start this off. You're looking at a blank Google page. I'm going to pull up my mural board because we're going to do some muraling today. I imagine this stream is going to last about 4 hours. So maybe even more, I don't know. But this is pretty important. So let's just kind of start with this. We at Smunchy Games had planned originally to just use Kickstarter to fund our projects and build a business on that, right? As many have in the past, right? There's some dirty secrets, though, that we should probably talk about. And I am not someone, so those of you who have been working with me for like 5, 6, even 7 years now, I'm not one to do the shady dealings. I don't like that at all. I think it's very wrong and unethical. So I do business right, and I'm not one to, like, rule with an iron fist. I am one to always look at people as people. They're not, resources. They're humans. And I also believe that every human deserves a chance to make it big in any way, right? I don't know if you want to call that the American dream from like 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I don't know what you like to call that, but that's just how I am as a business person. And right now, Parslings, we have originally decided to use Kickstarter again, and just kind of go with the flow. And to be honest with you, I've been in, like, kind of fighting with myself probably for the last 2 months. I've shared some things with some good friends on a few different Discord servers, people that I highly respect, and they care about me, so that's great too, and I appreciate that. If y'all are watching, y'all know who you are, and if you're just catching it later, again, just thank you. So I've been kind of almost tormenting myself with this. And, there's a lot of people talking about, like, the blockchain and all these other things for Kickstarter. We'll get into that. That's actually not the biggest problem. So that should give you a red alert already. That's not the biggest issue. There's a much bigger issue. And something I promised myself, two things when I went into tabletop games. The first thing I promised myself is I would never sell to another company, and I would never find investors. I can do that pretty easily. So I just want to be very clear on this. I used to be a venture capitalist. I used to do those things. I know them. I know it very, very well. And I have good friends who still do venture capitalism today. So it wouldn't have been hard for me to be like, hey, here's my IP, hand me 10 million and let me run to the bank and then, secure a contract with some big name. It's not hard, for me, I should say. However, I didn't want to do it that way. And the reason why I didn't want to do it that way is because I don't feel like it belongs in this type of creative space. I feel like when you're talking about tabletop RPGs especially, you're talking about people who make their own stories, and they're like your local Walmart clerk. Or they're someone who is at your local bank and they're like your accountant, or there's someone serving you food at a restaurant or retail, or they could be someone like me who's a big gun. But the reality is, at the end of the day, we're all still people, and I feel like those people deserve a chance. Now, what I could have done, like other board game companies and tabletop game companies, RPGs, all that, I could have gone directly to Kickstarter and said, hey, let me jump in bed with you, and you and I go on ahead and make a partnership, and you greenlight all my campaigns that are coming up, which some have done, just so you know. Some have done this, and that's why you constantly see their campaigns on Kickstarter, and why they're being raised more. Now, it was nice to see the blockchain issues people were raising. That would have just propelled the issue even further. But that is happening today, and they are breaking the Kickstarter rules. So I'm sharing this with y'all because we submitted parcelings recently, and we were declined, saying, hey, sorry, you can't do that, you already have a project out. And Kickstarter wasn't the only one who's done this. GameFound did this as well. So if you're using GameFound, same issue. And the response usually is going to be, we either only have enough room in our beta, or, hey, these are our first initial partners, or whatever the case may be. The problem I have with this is that this is going to hurt everyone else. And in my case, I'm not necessarily too salty about it. I'm a little salty because I was hoping that there was some more ethical pieces to this, but it sounds like no. Here they're going to spin it as they want to protect their people, but you and I both know you can go look up Kickstarter scams and they're everywhere. You can also go and look up all the different games that haven't been fulfilled, so on and so forth. Now, to be fair, some publishers are struggling, and it's because of shipping, right? I get it. They lost cash. It sucks. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the ones who can spin up a campaign and run 4 to 6 in a year and still leave them unfulfilled and then fulfill them 2 or 3 years later. This is a very, very big problem. And yeah, I know I'm being very bold and controversial, says Yunzi. It's good to see you too. Great philosophy, thank you. So I just wanted to share this with y'all because these are things in Facebook groups you see, these are in Twitter, other groups, all that. They are there. Some of them are giving these people advice, and I'll just be honest with you, it's really terrible advice. So as someone who is running these businesses outside of all this, this industry has a problem, a really, really big problem. In fact, you could even go as far as saying there's a lot of conflict of interest, which audits would suck right now. So, all that said, that's how I work, and I wanted to share this with y'all because we did get rejected, which I expected us to. That's why another reason why I'm sharing this. So what we're going to do instead is we may take parcelings to Indiegogo. I don't know yet. Or we're also going to do or a pre-direct order to our shop, our site. So keep a lookout for that. That's kind of where we're looking at right now. But I wanted you to know I'm doing this the right way. And I know a lot of others aren't going to be as transparent about it. I just know that's the truth. It's going to happen. So now you're starting to see more companies do these pre-orders, especially because it's more viable in that way. Like Steam Forged Games, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out the new Dark Souls 5th edition, it looks awesome. I think Gabe Gabe James, he ended up writing for it actually. If you don't know who he is either, you need to go check out Gabe. Gabe's amazing. Anyway, shameless plug aside there for Gabe, I guess. I don't know. I love Gabe and I love Dark Souls, so like yeah, of course. They're going a pre-order route, so just to kind of give you an idea when I say pre-order. Look at Steam Forged Games here. And there it is, pre-order. Boom. Right. So you can go and pre-order your edition. And we're going to do something like this, I think, for Parslings after we do an Indiegogo, assuming Indiegogo goes through, right? Again, I'm just trying to be a lot more ethical about it. I'm not cheating, if that makes sense, and I don't want to cheat. You know, there are times where it can be very tempting to me, where I can be like, you know what, I'm just gonna go and find, you know, a way in and negotiate that way. But I feel gross when I do that. Let's see. People, Yinzi says, people are getting burned by this. I see it more and more with people turning away from crowdfunding, and then many publishers straight up gaslight what backers witness. Yeah, absolutely, that does happen. And so with Now Toolth, as you can see, this is our little humble campaign. You know, we raised about, we're at about $9,000 right now, with the backer kit. And, you know, I did it the right way. And, you know, for us, like the Pathfinder community, they're a strong community. They're much smaller. You know, we do plan to transfer and translate into 5th edition and keep Pathfinder for Now Toolth in the far future. But the reality is that this is the reason why they won't greenlight this project. And now, to be fair, so good on Kickstarter for doing that. But I know that's not the truth for others. And that's very painful for me to watch, because for me, and I'm sharing this with y'all because someone like me, I do have marketing skills. I can put money into, you know, websites. I have the investments, right? So like for me, this isn't gonna be hard. You know, I can build the brand, build the audience, throw all that I need to. For someone who's not like me, and let's say you do survive on this, and like you're just barely making it by, and you're like making maybe 20,000 a year, and your Kickstarter's pulling in 50K, and you're like, you know, basically praying at this point you can make it, right? Just to live. If you aren't in bed with Kickstarter, these are the people who I am deeply empathizing for, because they're trying to make this a job, and they're trying to make this something that either they have to find a way to negotiate and do some shady dealings, or forget it. Like, it's just not going to happen. And that sucks. I hate that. A lot. So, it's just painful to watch. Fen says, yeah, Gabe wrote for it. Gabe's dope. Oh, yeah, for Dark Souls. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exciting. I'm super pumped about this. Yingzi says, I'd love to move to direct pre-orders, but not sure if we're going to be able to swing it by next campaign. Can't wait for Werekrakens. Thank you. Yeah, no, so what I'm doing, and I'm going to share this with y'all right now, Shopify crowdfunding. So this can be a little expensive, especially with Shopify, but there is a app that you can connect this one to your Shopify store called Crowdfunder, and it acts the same way as Kickstarter. Okay, it shows you a little progress bar, you know, how far it's been funded, and in a way it kind of acts more like Indiegogo, right? Like it's showing you the transparency of how much something was raised or whatnot. And where Indiegogo, I don't know if you know much about Indiegogo, but Indiegogo does flex funding. So it's not where if this goal isn't met, it doesn't fund. It's whatever's money there, the creator gets, because it's a pre-order. That's what it is. And that's why Indiegogo can kind of do this. They can run multiples at a time, where Kickstarter can't. They have locked in, if you do not reach this goal by this time, doesn't fund, doesn't work. So, I'm sharing this with y'all though, because if you do end up doing Shopify, this is a solid model to do. It is $24 a month on top of your Shopify subscription. So this is kind of why I'm saying It's not as financially friendly to those who are just starting out. And that kind of sucks, but it's also better than, you funding for 50 grand and Kickstarter taking like 4K from you, like that, right? So that's kind of the big piece here. Now, yes, this means you'll have to invest in your marketing. There is, I'm going to say this too right now, and this is what really frustrates me, because I've been working in software and like all that for like probably almost now 16 years. And the one thing that frustrates me to all hell is when discoverability is brought up for Kickstarter. And I'm going to say this right now. Yes, Kickstarter has an email chain that they send out, and it's a blast, email blast, the campaign. Yes, they have the recommendation on their algorithm. Here's the problem. Discoverability on Kickstarter is still a hogwash, because if you do not have your ads and your algorithms properly working on social media or Google, or you have had a website at least up for a year, it's going to be harder to find you. It's not impossible to find you, but the recommendations are starting to get washed out because there's too many people on Kickstarter now. And that's kind of just the unfortunate way of how algorithms like that work with discoverability. So at the end of the day, organically, you where it used to be back in the day with the discoverability of Kickstarter, you'd have like a 1 in 3 chance to get found. Now you're looking at like a 1 in 400 chance to be found through that discoverability. So the discoverability isn't exactly what it used to be. If that makes sense. And that's really something you need to consider. So with Smunchy Games, it's all about our brand. It's about, great folks like Fen, who is a content creator. They're a big Twitch streamer, or they're a YouTuber, or they're an influencer, right? Influencers, at the end of the day, outside of word of mouth, are going to be your best bet. Go and sponsor them, hand them the cash, have them play your game, And I'm not talking about just like reviewers, because I think in board game terms they call them reviewers. No. Like, that's fine. If they're an influencer, though, and that's why I'm using the word influencer, because people always argue about like review versus preview and all that. So I'm just going to cut that word out altogether. Forget those words. Influencer. If they are an influencer in any shape or form, big or small, you should go and check them out and sponsor them. It's kind of an old form of outbound marketing, in a way, kind of like television, right? And it works, though. It just works. It's of course harder because Twitch doesn't actually have a discoverable algorithm, so people have a really hard time finding those folks. I know, well, I lie. Twitch has something now. It's kind of broken, though. Facebook is going to be better to live stream on. TikTok will be better. Instagram, those platforms will be better to live stream on and catch an audience faster. But all that said, if you are a publisher, you're a creator, you're a designer, you're a writer, and you're like, hey, I really want to get the word out fast, work out a deal with an influencer, big or small, and that will happen. Guaranteed. It will happen. And you don't need millions of them. Like, pick 4. Pick 4 really great ones and put that out. So for myself, and I'm going to do some plugs for them, Guild of the Phoenix, Nerdalopedia, Weave the Tale, those Penny for a Tale, the Tale Network, basically. Those are my go-tos. They're great at what they do. They're great storytellers, so if you're in tabletop RPG, Goblets and Gaze is really great too. If they're watching, hi. These are great people to work with, and they are both major and minor influencers. They really show the game. They're good at in that way, but they will promote in this way. So paid sponsorships are the way you want to go. Fen says, "Oh, it's me." Yeah, that's the board game terminology, right? Kotrin, I think I'm saying your name right. Apologize if I've mispronounced your name. This has already been very helpful. Great, I'm glad. Thank you. Bear says I'm a gay goblin. I love you, Bear. I'm glad it's been helpful. Like, this is the stuff I'm doing. The industry is changing very quickly. Like, right now, underneath our nose, it's already changing. And like the blockchain thing, yeah, that's a big deal. I'm there with y'all. I get it. I will never do NFTs personally, but that's my own take. That's my hot take. Y'all can, I respect y'all's opinion, of course, too. But the real issue at hand goes beyond blockchain and NFT. The real issue is the negotiations of who's in bed together. And I know that's a very terminal and almost terrible way of describing that, but it's true. Like, the negotiations have happened, people are on a short list in that way, and that's not, now I want to be clear, that's not saying short lists are bad. That's not saying business negotiations are bad. What is bad is when you have a platform that was meant to help kickstart things for everyone to have that chance, and now it's been ripped away. That's not good. That's a different outcome, right? So, I'm sharing this with y'all because it's such a fascinating thing, and I tell this to my team all the time, like, I want to do things the right way, and I look back at, like, other things that I had been a part of in the past, or that I've seen my peers do, and I'm like, yeah, that's really dirty feeling. And for me, it's why Smunchy Games, like, I'm in it with y'all. I really wanted to experience that, because going back, building up from the bottom of nothing to the top, right? As a serial entrepreneur, that's how I am. I sometimes will throw things to make them fund faster, but I didn't want to do that with tabletop because I kind of wanted the truth. And this is the truth. This is the truth of the matter. So the reality here, though, these are things you can do at least to help, right? So Crowdfunder on Shopify, that's a good way. I think Squarespace has something else too. And then Indiegogo can work. I'm just going to throw some caution here, because with me, we're experimenting with it. I don't know Indiegogo the way that I should know it. I just know after the research I've done these past couple days, it's interesting how they do it. It definitely acts more pre-order than Kickstart, if that makes sense. So that should be helpful there. And I won't go into the campaign bit because that's something I just can't share with y'all due to NDA and contract agreements, but what I can tell you is that when you look at the flex, so let me see if I can find one. We'll look at Unspoken Documentary here. Here we go, Flexible Goal. So these people have gotten together to make an in-depth look into Christian heritage of Africa and people of African descent. Cool. So here you'll see percentage of the cash funded and created. It says, though, flexible goal, this campaign will receive all funds raised even if it does not reach its funding goal. That's what makes us more pre-order. That's why Indiegogo can do what they do. So I myself am going to experiment more with this. I'm going to do more of these things here and kind of tell you where it comes out. I can tell you that, like anything, that's why I brought up the discoverability. You will have to have an ad budget or some kind of organic budget, or that's why I brought up the influencers, right? Pay the influencers. They matter. They matter a lot. In fact, I would say it's the number one way of really getting something out there quick. And I've even done that in the past too, from like B2B to B2C, other companies. So I'm talking some jargon here. Sorry. B2B is business to business, a form of business, or B2C is business to consumer or customer. B2C is tabletop for the most part. We're in a B2C type of industry. We're selling to a customer or to a consumer in that way. Like myself, or a kid at the game store, or whoever, like Fen's a consumer. I'm going to use Fen as an example because he's in here. So that's kind of the big deal. Shankadactyl. Oh, hey, dude, what's up? But yeah. Let's see. So Cochran says, what budget size do you set aside for paying influencers? Yeah, so it depends, right? Like, I think it's one of those things where it depends on the value and the ROI they can bring you. So there's a lot of math. I'm not a big fan of math. But it's also about the future. So you want to invest in a future partnership. a lot of people only look at like the metrics, right, of what that influencer is bringing. And something I do, and I'm just gonna plug Fen this whole time because Fen's amazing. So I want to show you here. Let's go to Guild of the Phoenix. Okay. So Guild of the Phoenix, they're a smaller Twitter. However, the thing that people don't see is that when it comes to their shows and who they're partnered with, they're actually much larger than what their numbers lead on to, because they're reaching more people faster due to the quality of who they reach. Does that make sense? So in this case, when you know, Guild of the Phoenix puts out a casting call for like Parslings, that means they're automatically connected to me, Smunchy Games. They're connected to Weave the Tail. They're connected to Penny for a Tail. They're connected to other major streamers in the industry. They already know them. They're probably connected to other major publishers already as well. You may not even know it. And that's a really, really big deal. So they already have partnerships. The second thing is that Fen is an amazing storyteller. So you can take the videos taken that Fen uses and creates for you, and you can use those videos in other ways. So now you're talking about promotional pieces for you. And then the third one is that the cast is incredible. So Fen is able to take the folks there that he's casting. He screens them, you know, he goes through all the different views. They have like the charts, they'll do like X card things, all that stuff. So everything's set up, there's sensitivity there, everything around it, right? So that process matters as well. So you're not only getting quality people who are playing, a quality storyteller, but you're also getting the quality negotiations and connections. All of that said, in this case, Guild of the Phoenix is considered a minor influencer that has the potential to be a major influencer. And because they already do cross shows with people like Weave the Tail, or even like you know, someday like Paizo, Gen Con, like these are big things. So those are things you have to look at when you're looking at an influencer, and understand that it goes just beyond their metrics and numbers. Okay, because something especially with Parslings, Guild of the Phoenix actually brought us in a good percentage of our ROI, which is kind of incredible. So. Fen's like, you don't have to, but it's true. That's exactly what happened. That's how it went down. So out of all of the things we had done, we were pretty surprised by it, to be honest with you. And so I'm sharing that with y'all. As far as, going back to the actual question of what the budget was. So again, it depends. It could be $300 for 3 shows. It could be $300 for 2 shows. It could be $1,500 for a month or 2 worth of campaign. It just depends on the negotiation that you're working out. You know, it could be your artists are doing artwork for them, so that brings down the cost because that's like show resource, right, material, or YouTube, right, content material. That's another thing. Maybe you're supplying them with those things. It could also be, let's see, I'm thinking here because there's a lot of things we've done in the past. It could also be giveaways, so like product. So like here next to me I have 4 boxes just loaded with Parsling's core rulebooks, right? Some of these I actually think I need to send off to Weave the Tail, but I don't remember. Anyway, that's another thing. Consignment stuff. But here, you know, there's like product that I'm able to give, so the giveaway helps, right? And then I can take the giveaway and I can promote it. And then that way I can do a paid promotion, and then have like, you know, like a graphic that shows the Parsling's core rulebook as a giveaway. Go and watch Guild of the Phoenix at this date, this time. Here's an ad. Pay for that ad. Push it out. Right. All those fun things. So it kind of. Harker says I'm late. Oh no. Hi. It's good to see you. Been a little bit. Smunchy, have you looked at the Rowan, Rook, and Deckard crowdfunding source breakdowns yet? I haven't yet. Maybe I need to. But overall, I just wanted to show that to y'all here, and kind of why it's not... Do not rely on Kickstarter's discoverability. If you are doing that, your campaign won't fund. At all. Like, there's tons of campaigns that never fund. And that's again why I'm looking to just move off of Kickstarter. I may do one. So I'll be totally honest with you on that. I may do one per year for Kickstarter now. But they're starting to kind of like put my hand behind my back, tie it, and like say, hey, you kind of got this one hand, and that's all you got to work with. So in a way, and in other words, they're forcing me to almost put all of my products into one Kickstarter, which is super dangerous. Like, you don't want to do that either, because then if your funds aren't allocated properly to all of your different goods, that sucks. Now, all of that said, if you are only doing one Kickstarter campaign, and this is like your side project or your fun crowdfunding project, there's no problem with Kickstarter, right? In that way, there's no problem with using Indiegogo or pre-order. But if you are actively trying to make a business, there's a problem. Like, you're not going to make it in that way, and that kind of sucks. So, and I'm just sharing with all of y'all because that's what we're going through. Like, we're booming. And I have, between now and 2025, I have 6 to 7 projects and books that need to get released and launched and sent out to people. And Kickstarter's not viable anymore for that. Like, I can't do it. Because, one, they won't let me do it, right? Like, you see the response here. But they are letting others do it. And that's kind of why I'm like, oh, this is not good. So, I'm looking to, things like Crowdfunder through Shopify or Indiegogo, and then building up our brand, which I should have done in the first place, but and I know that would have been the smarter business decision. Like, I should have done that. The reason why I didn't is because I actually kind of wanted to experience what y'all are going through. So I purposely put myself in a situation where I didn't have the cash to fund, right? Or I'm someone who's a college student, or I'm someone who is barely scraping by on minimum wage. I wanted to see what that experience is like. And that's why I'm telling you right now, that's what this experience is. I'm going to fund one campaign. I'm going to do really well on that one campaign, but unfortunately that one campaign, if I hit it out of the park and let's say I make $100,000 on it, that is going to take me 3 to 4 years to create, craft, and fulfill, print, ship, right? Because shipping sucks now because of all the logistics. And that's too long. And I don't know anyone, even people who make minimum wage, that can live on $100,000 for 4 to 5 years and expect to print and ship and do all those things too. So I really want to put that into perspective for y'all for a second. Let's really think about that, right? Like, there's just no way. That's not feasible. And it's sort of painful to think about, really. But it's why I'm kind of sounding the alarm on this. I'm like, guys, I have 7 projects. Half of them are done. They're completed, right? Like Paths World of Adia. So let's just talk about Paths for a second. Paths has 3 Paths core books coming out for the Path system alone, our unique system that we created. And then we have a D&D 5th edition book for Paths World of Adia. And then we have Parsling's Nominal City, Era 1 City Guide. Then we have Naltulth Candlehurst, and we have Attack on the Blisterwind Road from Naltulth, right? Those are 7. That doesn't include the other 20 books I have to do between now and 2025. That's insanity. There's no way I can do that with Kickstarter, right? At least ethically, right? Legally, there's no way I can do that. So I just kind of want to chuck that out there for y'all and just be like, hey, here's a reality check. Let's talk about it. By the way, I don't know who these people are. Maybe you should go check them out. Hopefully this gives them some funding. Harker says, I'll send it over through Discord. It seems to be saying the same things as you in some respects. Good to know, yeah. I'm glad. That's good. I'm glad other people are talking about it in that way. They're kind of realizing oh shoot, man, this isn't good. There's just, this is the bigger issue. I know that right now Kickstarter has the whole blockchain issue going on, where that got some really negative feedback, especially about NFTs. No one wants NFTs on Kickstarter, and that makes sense to me. I get it. I personally won't do them myself just because of that. But but there's more. It goes beyond that. Like, that's so small potatoes compared to what's actually happening. And I wanted to show that. So let's talk about, though, like, how this could actually work. So that's kind of why I have this up today. And I'm putting this together because I was going to do this today by myself, but I was like, you know what? Maybe other people could benefit from this, and we're going to see how this works. So again, I've purposely put myself in a boat where I have some funding, so I'm not completely broke as an individual. I'm approaching it from someone who's making an okay living wage, and I'm also approaching it from someone who may have to be on a shoestring budget, especially like if art is something you can barely afford up front, right? So I'm looking at like black and white art, I'm looking at like a zine size, I'm looking at all those things, right? How do I, as someone in that boat who can't use Kickstarter to actually constantly put out books, like I only get one zine, okay, great, that's good and all. And what is a zine? So a zine is, for those who don't know, it's like a small tabletop RPG book. So think like D&D, but really, really tiny, okay? And kind of this OSR feel, so like rules can kind of shift and change. But that's not the point here. Point is it's one product, right? So let's look at our options, okay? And the reason why I'm using zines as an example is because zines are super cheap to create. There's someone who can be on a shoestring budget, for sure. So let's just put our little topics out here. So zines, actually, no, let's use sticky notes. Let's use a different color, pink. I like pink. Zines, all right. And then, so areas of focus, that's what this is. I'm going to constantly bring us back to this. Areas of focus, zines. Viable outcome. So I need this to be realistic. I can't sit in my dream world and say, okay, I'm going to try and do this one thing, and then, like, if it works, great. If it doesn't, cool. No. Viable outcome. Long term. Because short term doesn't work. Short term only works for that here and now in that moment. But as you can see, we're in now 2022. And Path's World of Adia has just been in development for like 7 years. Like, holy crap, it's almost been a decade? Whoa. So, like, long term, like, and I'm just using Paths as an example because a lot of you are connected to it, but even if you're someone who's getting into this for the first time, COVID hit us 2 years ago. That's how fast time flies, right? So long term, can't be here and now, can't be short term. Now you will have a short term strategy, but it'll go into the long term, right? So long term, viable outcome, zines, and then shoestring budget. Shoestring budget. And then my goal, I want to live on this. I want to live on what I make and sell. Okay? That's my goal. And it's a big one. So Bear says, I like small potatoes, though. I do, too. I really love the red roasted potatoes, especially when they have, like, garlic and butter. All right. Well, now I'm just making myself hungry. Harker says Blue is working really hard on Nominal City. I've seen some of the work, and it's really cool. The Choice System SRD has some great layout, too. Thank you. Yeah, Blue is killing it. That's another thing, too, right? Like, I'm thinking of people like Blue, or anyone else for that matter. You know, you're kind of like, you're trying to make this happen. So let's make it happen. Harker also says, purists will limit zines to 8 pages unbound. At this point, they are racking up to 60 pages, but an A5, so still smaller, right? So you're looking at, like, so let's look at, like, budget, right? If you're looking at that budget and you're really looking at how to pull this out, you're probably going to be on, like, at most. So in this case, if let's say you're lucky to be moderate, you've got a, we'll call it a $700 budget. Oh, let's round it out. Say 600. All right. And then you also have, at this point, a idea of how much this might cost. So you're looking anywhere between $1 to $3 a unit, and I'll show you how this all connects to with influencers and streamers and content creators. This all actually flows in with y'all too. This is a domino effect. It's not just the publisher or creator. It's a domino effect for sure. So that's what I'm saying. Stay tuned. $1 to $3 per unit. And then this is also going to be, I don't know. Let's think about this. Shipping. That's all I can say. Shipping's stupid right now. It can range anywhere from like $5 for media mail in the US to like $20,000 for a shipping container, upwards now of $32,000. So freight anywhere goes from $1,000 to $6,000 a pallet. So I don't know. It could be anything. And fulfillment. How are you gonna do fulfillment, right? Okay, let's talk about that. Now, right out of the gate, this already looks super scary. Like, I'll just be honest with you. Being once in those shoes, yeah, like, you're sitting here going, shoot, I got a $600 budget. I can't do ads very well. How the heck am I going to do this? $1 to $3 per unit. What happens if I get 1,000 backers, right? Cool, $3,000 for the zine, but now, like, I'm going to have to just charge shipping later. So we'll say charge shipping later. Charge shipping when shipping. When shipping. Or we'll say it so it's not as tongue twisty. When product is shipped. Or ready to ship, I should say. Because you don't want to charge after. That's silly. You'll end up getting stung, so you don't want to get stung. So, all right, here we go. So this is already kind of scary. $600 budget. That's all I got. So most of this I would say put into artwork and graphic design. So I'm going to allocate my budget. I'm going to say I'm going to put at least 500 into art and graphics. All right. Now, this is what I got for this month, though. All right. Now, let's say I'm going 3 months out, and I'm saving. So I'm barely pulling in like a $50 savings. So if I do that, then I can stretch my budget. So maybe 3 months, that's like $150. $150 paid to one influencer for one show. That's enough, for real. Like, that's all you need. And that's why this is pretty great. So those are your areas of focus. Here's what I'm doing. We'll move this down here. And for those of you who are curious about this tool, because I get this question a lot, this tool is called Mural. It is expensive. It's about $300 a year to use. What I like doing is I'll like create boards for my friends and family, and I'll give them a visitor link so they can go and mess around and all their stuff in here. So, so this is probably what I'm working with. So like it's really $600 to an $800 budget, right? Okay. Let me see here. What am I looking at? What's going on? There we go. Okay. 600 to 800, 1 to 3 per unit, charge shipping when product ready to ship, which is what we're doing for Naltool, for an example, and then fulfillment, which fulfillment has a cost. So, depends on what that's happening. So this is what I got to start the campaign: Shopify, Crowdfunder, Indiegogo. So now let's say Kickstarter's completely out of the picture. What do? Coffee. That's what I do. No. So what I do is, in this case, if I've already paid for this, so if I haven't paid for it, you're looking at like $350 for Shopify. So it's expensive. I mean, like, that's kind of a thing you're gonna have to weigh for yourself and be like, do I really want to build that brand out? It's expensive, you know, especially on a shoestring budget. Like, man. So this one's gonna be harder to do. However, Indiegogo is $0, which is why Kickstarter is so attractive. So Indiegogo may be more of your route if you don't have the funds. If you can scrape the funds together, Shopify might be better. Now, the problem here, though, is this goes back to your goals. So, like, if you're someone who is trying to build your own brand or a business, hopefully you are working in a way to pull money in, right? Now, if you can't do this yet, you have another option. Actually, you have a couple more options. They're just going to be a different model, but you have Patreon, right? You also have Ko-Fi. All of these work in different ways, right? To bring in cash flow. There we go. Harker says, I will say that printing costs are going up if you are using something like Mixam. Right, I don't use Mixam or SmartPress. So there's that. We'll talk about that. Not saying they're bad. They're not bad. They're just actually pretty expensive. I got a quote for $3 for a very basic 40-page black and white book in A5. Just printing color on its shot, a bit up to $4. Yeah. Now, to be fair, Mixam, I would say, is probably the better of the two for quality purposes. But yeah, for me, it just depends, right? Like, that's where you want to do your due diligence and, like, look around at multiple different sources per year. Manufacturing is when I say sources. So that's something you'd want to do. You know, for me, like, I have a few in mind that I use regularly, including even DriveThru, which I know DriveThru doesn't have the highest of quality when it comes to printing, but it is acceptable. You know, people will purchase it. We've actually had retailers purchase books from DriveThru through us, through our fulfillment. So it's not off the table. But I would also say, you know, again, just go out there and look. Go see what you got. And then Harker also says, support your local printers. Yeah, so that's where I was going, right? Look at your local. You never know who's out there. They often deliver for no cost. If you're only printing 1 or 2 colors, look into risograph printing. As long as you're okay with uncoated paper, it's much more economical, right? So, and not just your local. So that's another thing. Local to that area that you're trying to ship to. So that's something that is something to think about. You're fulfilling in. This is something we're actually going to be doing for Parslings, is we're going to be looking at Australia to do some printing there, possibly. Just because shipping took way too long to get there. And shipping also took, it was way too expensive. Like, man, out of my own cash, not with Kickstarter funds, or any other type of, like, pre-order funds, I dropped about $5,000 in just shipping. Just to, like, Australia and parts of Europe. So that wasn't fun. Something to think about. So, and that was because Gamerati was able to get us consolidated, which I really appreciate. So, shout out to Gamerati. They're great people. But anyway, so these are kind of like the paths you can go down overall. And really where you want to focus and look at when it comes to creating these things. So how does this affect, so before I dive into this, how does this actually affect content creators? Well, let me put it to you this way. If there ever comes a time in the industry where people can't afford to make things or craft those things or sell those products, there is nothing for you to create for except for the big guns like Wizards of the Coast, Paizo, anyone who licensed from Games Workshop, right? Or big names like The Witcher, etc., right? So, you know, even now, to be fair, those third-party folks too, most of them would drop off as well. So, like, you're looking at DM's Guild, right? DM's Guild would probably be then your go-to. So you really want to support this structure, because while it is about to get actually a lot harder for indies, on top of this Kickstarter issue now, it's still important to look at that as like an industry as a whole and a structure. So if you are someone who is a content creator and you pull in most of your revenue through sponsorships of indie created games that aren't third party, either you're going to have to pivot because these creators can't create anything anymore, or you're going to go out of business. So you don't want to do that either. So I would say diversify your portfolio as well as support those creators. Assuming that you like their product. That's not me saying go out there and just support them because you want to. But if you actually like their product, you should support them. And I have to put that caveat in there, because if there comes a point where people are just creating things you don't like, I mean, of course, then unfortunately that's just going to fall apart. So no one ever talks about that, but that's how it is. If there's things that they're creating where you're like, I'm not really a fan of this, or I don't really care for this, or whatever. Like me, I'm super picky. So it's very hard at times for me, to be honest with you. But all that said, getting back to this shoestring budget, it'll flow into everything, and I promise there's a domino effect here. So I'm using zines. Now, if you notice, I'm not using board games at all. Like, I could use a card game. A card game could probably replace a zine here. So you could make these interchangeable, truthfully, because card games are in the same boat as zines, if they're small. So, like, pocket card games, right? Like Fray. You know, which actually, if you want a copy of Fray, I still have some, which is great. But the reality is that board games are not sustainable. Like, at the end of the day, they just aren't, unless you're pulling in like this massive volume, and even then, like, you're so reliant on the print, like you don't even have like a safety net of a digital version of your RPG, right? Or of your board game, I should say. RPGs have that, but like, you're forced to use Tabletop Simulator, or like Tabletop, whatever the other browser version was. That's not good, man. you gotta find other ways to diversify. So if you are in board games, that's not me like discouraging you to not do board games. That's me saying, if you do board games, please find a way to diversify. You're gonna have a harder time at the end of the day if you don't. Or unless you find a way to hit it big and you kind of do some of those shady dealings, you could do that. I would advise against it. Or you could just hit it big out of pure luck. And then, lucky you, congratulations. You did a good job, you know? Totally okay, too. So, anyway, back to this. In here, you're looking at, for sure, so I'm looking through this now. And you're going to see some parallel here because of how these tools work, as well as how your own brand and website works. So that's kind of why this is interesting. I've never really talked about this before in this way. So no matter what you do, like Kickstarter too, Kickstarter you still need ads, which is kind of why I say this. You're still having to pay a company, unless you're on a shoestring, you know, to put that out. Now, there's a difference here. There's paid ads, but then there's organic ads. And I'll share how to do that. Y'all have heard me talk a lot about paid ads in the past. If you have a question about a paid ad, I can answer. Totally fine if you have a question in chat. I'm going to come back to this one later because I've talked about it so much. We're going to talk instead about organic ads, which I don't talk about a lot. And that's because I always wanted to reinforce that if you are trying to, so here we go, area of focus, you want to live on what you make and sell, you at some point will have to do paid ads. There's no way around that. But to start, there are such things as organic ads, and they're free. So that's another way of saying that. You know, you'll see a lot of things like websites and Facebook groups talk, you know, about, or even Twitter, right? You'll see them like post something and then they'll share it out. They're like, it's great to post in Facebook groups because they're free, right? Free advertising, which is true to an extent. There's another problem with that though, and that's Facebook groups are very controlled. So they're also kind of like Kickstarter. There are certain people who have negotiated with one another, and they will gain priority over you. So your organic ad could hit. They could also just completely delete your ad, your organic post, and remove it and be like, sorry, we don't want you posting here, right? Which happens a lot. That's controlled ads, controlled promotion. And in a way, I feel like that's worse than paid. At times. Now, if you do have that, though, you have that luxury of knowing someone, or that group maybe is just kind enough to let you share it. Great. I would say the one thing that I'm like in such hard agreement and strong agreement with is like the solidarity of, like watching other Discord servers have their self-promotion channels. I think that's amazing. It's good for them to do that. It brings in people, but it also helps those people that they bring in. I love the fact that Twitter has like their self-promo Saturday. That's going on right now, which is probably why I have like 8 notifications. So hashtag self-promo Saturday. That hashtag is on fire. Everyone looks at it. Like, just alone, and I'll show you here. Oh my god, 13. So it's jumped. Look at this. This is like... And people are actively engaged. They're talking right now. So go promote your self-promo Saturday stuff right now. If you haven't on Twitter, you should. You should absolutely do that. You can even use my thread right now. It's already exploding. Let me see. I can post it into Twitch. Let me see here. I'm gonna look at myself. It's gonna be weird, but at least y'all can find it. Here you go. Go post on Twitter your self-promo stuff for real. But this is hashtags on Twitter are great to look out for. Instagram has some pretty solid things. TikTok is going to be something that you're going to want to do as well. And then of course promote your friends and so on and so forth. But this allows for like a deeper connection in that way, organic or free promotion. One that also really works but can be really hard to lock down. So here, actually, let me make some notes. Twitter self-promo Saturday. Cool. Okay, so we got that. And then we have. Let's see. What else did I say? Instagram hashtags. And then Facebook groups. And then TikTok. So TikTok, there's like a way to do it. Yeah. So like social, and then of course like your website, emailer, your newsletter. So these are all ways that you can get free promotion, essentially, organic ads. You can post them. Now, we were just talking about Reddit. Reddit can be super wild. Reddit, there are some subreddits that allow you to do a form of promotion, like the Pathfinder. Here's something really cool, by the way. If you are someone who is a creator and you haven't checked out Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I'm going to plug it so hard right now, because the subreddit for Pathfinder 2nd Edition strongly supports free promotion. I am not kidding. So that actually helped us with our Kickstarter. And of course we had the art for it, so like people clamored to it. But if you are considering on dipping your toe into tabletop RPG creation and all of that, that is one form of, if you're a Pathfinder fan, that's one way to really start an audience very quickly. Like, you'll gain attention very fast. Now, it's not the biggest one. I've learned that the Pathfinder 2nd Edition community, they're not as fast to pull the trigger on purchasing things, but they are growing, and they strongly care about their community. That I have learned. So that's interesting, just to note. But Reddit can be hard to play with, right? I know if you do have a world and an IP, and you really have dug into your world, I know world building, the subreddit there is great too, but it's not like an actual promotion. It's more of you're talking about your world. So that's like a backwards way of promoting. So let's look at chat real quick. I feel like I've missed some things. Bear says, how come we're buying so many shoestrings? Well, because I don't have enough. They keep on just getting eaten by all the Volusia. No, I don't know. Volusia don't eat shoestrings. They eat like paintbrushes, don't they? Or something like that. I don't know. My kids keep on hiding them. Harker says self-promotion chains are really interesting because it's sort of both due to self-interest. Oh, it's sort of born due to self-interest. You go to the chain to promote yourself, and in that interest you promote the chain, which also promotes other people. In addition, you will also be exposed to others promoting themselves. Right, yeah, exactly. Although there's a second piece to that. So let's talk about that. So this is true. Yes. Also, this hashtag matters. The thing about this hashtag, so Abyssal Brews, I think, is the one who actually came up with this self-promo Saturday, and it's exploded, which I'm going to retweet them. And others do it too, so it explodes in that way. However, what happens is, outside of Twitter, is this. Self-promo Saturday. Google is indexing it. So this means it has a possibility to also become trending on Twitter and a hot click item here on Google. That's a pretty big deal. And you can look in here, Self-Promo Saturday. They also do it on Facebook, apparently. That's interesting. And this hashtag matters. It matters a lot. So if I click on this, it'll show me top, but then I can look at latest, people, photos, right? And I don't have to have an account either. But then what ends up happening is that's where you start word of mouth. So word of mouth starts to explode. So all of this leads to word of mouth, which is what you want. Now, this is... Let me look at an equal sign. Equal sign, where are you? There we go. Okay. So, word of mouth is a really big deal. It's another way you could say grassroots, right? Like, do grassroots, go knock on doors type of thing, but digitally. It works well if you know what you're doing, right? Like, this is a start to it. There's more to it, though, that you could probably do. You could make your own show, your own stream show. You could become your own influencer if you're really good at that. You know, other ways to do it. You could partner with other companies. You could, like, as in partner, as in, like, you could, I don't know, go co-design a game for another company and then promote yourself that way. You got your foot in. You could write for another company. You could do artwork for another company, et cetera, right? Like, that's called standing on shoulders of giants. So, working with and or for other companies, right? Because now your name's out there, you know. I mean, that's like an old school way of doing it, but it's a good way. It's a good way to do it. Harker says indie projects are often very quick to either fund or fail. Right. So that's where brand trust comes in, right? So, like, you need the brand for sure. You need a brand, or something that people can cling on to, right? Like, there's actually this really cool little where is it here? There you go. Stream of many things. Gosh dang it! I saw it. I think I retweeted it. Super tiny little zine. Y'all know I'm a huge fan of dark fiction. Shiver's cool, but that's not the one I'm thinking of. Where is it? I just saw it. This was also kind of neat too. This Venestra 5e. This is it. The Toxic Wood. So I'm giving them promotion right now. They're at 20 grand on Kickstarter, right? They have 705 backers. This will probably be the only campaign they run this year, and maybe even next year, to be honest with you. That's, again, why I'm moving away from Kickstarter slowly. I'll probably just do one per year at most. But this is pretty cool. I thought this was a pretty neat campaign. It is a zine, so we're talking about zines right now, right? So here you go, a print version for 12 euros, which I think is like $14, yeah, for US, right? So clearly on a budget, but you kind of see how the aesthetic works, right? Here's your add-ons, all that. I'll just drop this in for Toxic Wood. Go tell them we sent you if you decide to back them. Where did I put myself? Oh, okay, well. I just need a second screen. I do have a new setup coming, I promise y'all. I actually got a new computer coming and a bunch of other new things, so there you go. Go support them. You know, talking about this though, this is actually a great example. This is exactly what I'm talking about right now. Like, look, you see the hand-drawn stuff. They're kind of put this together. I will probably end up backing this just because I love this stuff so much. But in a way though, this works for this one project, right? Like if you're just doing this as a one project thing, cool, you're good to go. If you are actually going back to this area of focus, I want to live on what I make and sell, and I want a viable outcome, this is not the way to do it, unfortunately. Fulfilled by drive-through. Yep, there you go. So we were just talking about drive-through, right? Zine month 2022, that's cool. Here's your risks and challenges. Previously I ran the successful Woodfall campaign in 2018. So oh man, this is perfect. This is like absolutely what I'm talking about. 7th Kickstarter they've been involved in though, right? But they ran a successful Kickstarter 4 years ago. 4 years ago. And then I also collaborated on Spiral Isles. So they collaborated with a project in 2019. Then they ran another Zine Quest in 2020, 2 years. 2021 I ran the Haunted Hamlet and other hexes for Zine Quest 3. Cool. So the next year later they had to fulfill. And then I was also a contributor for the Monster Hunter Adventure Collection campaign later that year. Collaboration. All of these projects were successfully funded and fulfilled. They have experience. They're trying to sell you on their experience, which clearly they have the experience to fulfill what they're trying to do. But I want you to pay attention to the years and how they had to do it. So they couldn't just run a campaign every year. They had to run and then collaborate. And that's what they're forced to do. And this isn't enough to live on. Like there's no way. They got to print. They have 705 backers, right? They asked for a very humble goal of like $2,200. This is what I'm talking about. It's going to be really hard to live on something like this, especially if that's your goal, and that's your purpose, right? You are going to have to collaborate with others, but even then, that collaboration, they're only going to be able to do the same thing. So here we go back to this. I mean, I don't know. That to me just says you're barely getting by. That has nothing to speak about how good their work is, because this is phenomenal. This is my jam. Y'all know me. I draw weird things too. This is my jam. It's just, printing delays, delivery's always possible. There is delays in fulfillment due to global supply chain issues. It's like, how is this viable, right? So that's kind of, man, this is just like such a perfect example that it's happening as we speak. But I want to hone in on that. Like, they're not long term. Like, you're working on a shoestring budget, so you're going to have to diversify here, or you're going to have to find a way to do more work in the industry or work with other people, right? Like collaboration, or you do something like this where you say, okay, cool, here's my budget, my first campaign, right? Okay, cool. If I plan to run 7 or collaborate with 7 in some shape or form, would it not be better than to have multiple methods of pulling in that revenue? Right? And that's what I'm saying. So here you can now funnel everyone into this one Kickstarter. Don't get me wrong. You don't want to always split things. But after Kickstarter, where are they going to go for late pledge? Or are they even going to do late pledge, right? They don't say that, which is understandable. That's not a requirement for them to say it either. But it is letting you know, hey, shipping's not included in your pledge. Here's how these things are going to be delivered. Here's a quote talking about how good it is, right? They're trying to sell it to you. I already know it's good because the artwork's great and it hits my vibe. The graphic design's kind of fun too. But this is the unfortunate truth, right? And this is why I'm saying this is actually going to affect everyone. Old School Essentials. OSE, huh? That's interesting. I don't know what that is. I like it though. Old School Essentials rule system. Oh, okay. Cool. That's great. But see, now I just blew past all that. Like, I know in the first 5 minutes if I'm going to love it or not. Like, the moment I look at it, right? And that's really the truth. That's marketing, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what's viable for your business, for your outcome. And not just your business, but if it is something you can live on. So right now, based on what I just saw, that's not livable. That's a side hustle, right? You're absolutely going to have a full-time job somewhere else. Yes, for sure. Now, to be fair, that's not a bad thing, right? Like, I do that. I have multiple streams of revenue that come in. I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm also, I also do work. I do UX consultancy. I do all that stuff too. So that's kind of the reality of it, right? But that's not to say that it can't reach that point. It can't reach that level of turning into something more viable and long term. So what you're going to end up doing is, if you do want to do this, you then kind of need to plan out the after. And a lot of you have heard me talk about the after sales, right? Something I constantly stress and talk about all the dang time. I don't know why that text is so small. The after sales. What happens if I do this? This. Oh, okay. Let's make this bigger. Can I make this bigger? No. Can I make these bigger? Yes. Okay, cool. So, the after sales, this is something that I constantly have to think about, but the reality is that you're kind of looking at it, right? These are your after sales. So, if you use your own store, you're going to have great after sales. Indiegogo, they have it set up to where you can just constantly collect cash. Now, I would say, this is where I would advise have a shutdown plan. So, like a closeout maybe. Closeout campaign plan. Put that together. It's going to go here. Right? And when I say campaign, it's not reference just to Kickstarter. It's reference to everything you're doing. So like if you're doing, let's say you're using Patreon and you have a specific model that you're trying to do there, you're trying to do Ko-Fi, and you're like, hey, I've got a shop, this is what you can go and do. Like, put a deadline, right? Be like, hey, deadline to purchase first printing of X is, I don't know, May 31st, right? So May 31st is my closeout. Well, actually, we'll go a little sooner. We'll say May 20th. That's my closeout. And then I go to the printers, right? And then reinvent this. Like, do this over and over again. Plan that out. So technically, these after sales, this is what makes it viable, though. So this is where viability comes in. Because here, all of these are viable for after sales. The one that isn't is Kickstarter. I really want to highlight that. Kickstarter is not viable for after sales. And what do I mean by this? Yes, BackerKit exists. Yes, late pledging exists. But you're using another tool. Right? So if you're using another tool on Kickstarter, so like BackerKit, we had to use this for Naltulth. BackerKit. Here you go. So people can go and purchase this right now, which, by the way, if you actually do want Naltulth for real, now's the time to get in. We're closing it out in April. So I'll put that in here. I keep on going back. I just need my second screen set up. Here we go. Go and get Naltulth if you're interested, again. But here, I'm not on Kickstarter anymore. This pulled from Kickstarter, it pulled everything in, and now I'm having to pay twice. I'm having to pay a second time to BackerKit to make this work. That's where someone would say, well, GameFound's free. And it's like, yeah, but I kind of feel gross using that if they're kind of doing the same thing Kickstarter's doing. Like, that's not fun, right? They're now limiting me on this in this way that I can't run my business. So that doesn't help me. That actually makes it worse. And if they are partnering specifically with these other folks, then yeah, and in a way there's kind of some conflict of interest, right? Because they are also a game company. They themselves are not. Now, this is not me spreading libel or defamation or whatever. This is me telling you the truth. Awakened Realms owns GameFound. And I think they're great people. I do. I honestly do. I think they have their heart in the right place. But I think they can't handle what's about to come their way when it comes to the mass amount of people like Kickstarter. It's just a problem that's no one solved, right? Except for maybe Indiegogo. Like, which sounds weird because Indiegogo is looked at as like the second rate, like, crowdfunding, but they solved it with their flexible goal. And if GameFound did that, this might be a different story. If Kickstarter did that, this also might be a different story. Just to be like, you know, I'm looking at all sides. I'm not like slamming one or the other person. It's just Indiegogo, I think, figured it out. But what does that do? Well, it can deter people from backing, right? Because they're like, well, if it's not fully funded, you know, I want to make sure the funds are there and secured. Got it. Makes sense. But at the end of the day, that's not actually how these things work. So it's actually a pre-order that you're using. And because Kickstarter is so big now, they have to treat it that way. Like, you're having major companies use Kickstarter. You know, let's just go browsing. Let's go take a look. Discover. Here's your discoverability, which is like a nightmare to get through. Explore games. Jeez. And then I have to sort this by tabletop. Fun. Okay, so then coming through here, alright, what do we got? Kobold Press is huge. They are massive, alright. Exploding Kittens, again, hand-to-hand wombat. So, damn, right. Okay. Who's this? Deep Rock Galactic. Oh, shoot, man. Okay, got it. Who else is in here? Into the Unknown. Okay. Gregor's Guide to Gates. That's kind of neat. I like that. But as you can see, and again, there's nothing wrong with these projects at all. It's just... Oh, do you notice the drop, though? Like, holy cow. You go from, like, millions to 500,000 to, like, 7,000. It's so broad. Like, holy cow, man. You know? Yeah, you can tell who's killing it. Daryl's cool. Daryl's a good guy. Y'all should go check out Daryl's work. This makes sense to me. Daryl worked his way to the top, for sure. But, like, you can kind of see... And let me say that differently. Everyone has worked their way to the top at some point, including the extremely wealthy. What I'm saying here is that Daryl did what we are talking about here. He literally worked from a shoestring budget as an artist. So, yeah. So I'm giving him more credit. I'm really surprised to see that Good Games isn't doing better on their Unfair, because they're great people too. That's cool. Crucible. I got a message from Crucible. There's Toxic Wood. So we're just browsing. I'm just showing you, like, this is what we're dealing with, right? And to be realistic, let's really dive into this, like 120,000, 132,000. That's not enough. Like, you're gonna print the game. Oh, this is from AEG though. So Alderac Entertainment is a massive company. They're huge, technically. But like, this is not enough funding to live on. Anyway, you can kind of see. I don't have to keep on going through this. You can kind of tell if you just decide to browse on your own, right? Yunzi says, why limit creators that have run successful campaigns that are within X% of their target delivery? Right! Exactly! Exactly! Why limit them? Why do that? And that goes back to because you're probably someone who's not in bed with them in some shape or form, right? I mean, look at this. Like, Zweihander? Come on. What? Did they already fulfill? Like, I saw Blackbirds. I saw it the other day. Who's Blackbirds? Because, who owns Zweihander? Gosh dang it. Michael's Press? They're huge. They're like an investment company. They own, like, other licenses, too. Zweihander Publisher. And they're probably using that. Andrews McMeel. Okay, whatever. I was close. There we go. Let's look at Andrews McMeel. Alright, check this out. For real. Calvin and Hobbes, the Peanuts, like, come on, man. You're a huge publisher. Andrews McMeel, Oddball, yeah, Sarah Anderson. Dude. Partner with us, publishing. This is kind of what I'm trying to understand here. Again, no shade thrown at Zweihander. I do not want to start a war. I'm just telling you, like, I just don't understand. I'm trying to get it, you know. Like, see, where was Black? Okay, now I have. Oh, that's another question. Where's Blackbirds? So there's Zweihander Flames of Freedom. So this must have been fulfilled. Okay. Let's go look at Blackbirds, because now I want to know how that worked. And they, you know, I know a lot of people who will use a second company. See, okay, there you go. So Andrews McMeel Universal, they are the ones who, yeah. So here you go. This is what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm showing you all the nooks and crannies and some of the things going on. I could do this right now. I could technically go out and get file two more companies within the next few months. Easy, by the way, I could do that. And Grave Titan Games, I own as a subsidiary. I could immediately put them on a Kickstarter, and then I could make a third one called whatever I want, and then put that out as a Kickstarter too. But this is not flagged. It's not flagged, right, at all. Now, to be fair, you can see the collaborators aren't the same either, so it would make sense, right? But it's the first one they created. Still the same publisher, though. And yes, I was a backer. That's right. I gave it like $1, I think. And again, it's not to pick on them. Like, they have to eat. I get it, you know. But I don't like this. I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to go and create multiple companies just to fund on Kickstarter. I feel wrong doing that. Let's see here. Okay. I missed a lot. I know the guy making Dungeon Local 1. That's cool. Gotta be careful, though. Those aren't all in USD. True. How do we get in bed with them? Kickstarter. You have to start making multiple companies, and then you have to start funding extremely high numbers. Not like this, but like this. That's the way if you really want to do it. I wouldn't advise that. I'd advise against it, but if you want to, you could. Fen says, yeah, McMeel. Adam says, that's a joke. I know. I love you so much, Adam. Mirioi, that's a joke. Will not land well by the time you notice it, but trust me, it was goodish. You won. You won. That was great. Red says, I could do it with some hair gel, 3 vodka martinis, and a Ninja Simone LP. Or Nina Simone. That's great. Some of them are in euro, which is deceptive in terms of being smaller for both goal and brand funding, current funding. Yeah, I mean, that's fair for USD, right? Currency exchange, but even then, money's still money. And the way it works in that case, euro versus USD versus AUD versus you want to go to rubles, right? Or what have you, as long as you're pulling it in, like, it's there. Muroi laughs. Yunzi, wow, you'd think they wouldn't need crowdfunding. All right. Yunzi brought up something so good. You think they wouldn't need crowdfunding, right? So here's the thing. Crowdfunding now is so big that every major company is even doing it with their own subsidiaries, and you may just not know it. This is a great example. Zweihander, Andrews McMeel. Andrews McMeel is the publisher. Zweihander, who created it. Here. See, collaborators on this project, Andrews McMeel Universal. crowdfunding is one of the main ways to validate a project and prove its worth to investors. So, if you want a major investment or you want to do a major partner negotiation, you go to Kickstarter and you prove it. You say, the investor says, okay, I'll give you, $500,000 and I'll match it if you can make at least $500,000. And I'm just using big numbers right now. Other ways are they will say, hey, I'm going to... I want to invest in this, I want to help fund this, or I want to publish this, right? A big publisher like Andrews McMeel. I want to do this, but I kind of need to see that you're pulling in the cash. So they go out and get the funding that they need, prove the worth, and then they pull it in. Now, to be fair, that is something you should be doing for your own stuff. However, crowdfunding is so big now that you cannot do much without it. And the reason for it is not because of the crowdfunding concept as a whole, it's because of the transparency. You can see how many people backed it and the amount that came in, right? So, with that level of transparency, this gives customers, us, people who may not know business, we may not know marketing, we may not know those things, and we go, oh, cool, they're sharing these numbers with us. So now we kind of know how it works. Actually, that's not true. We don't know at all how it works if you don't know those things, right? What it is you're just seeing the number, which is why then you have the other assumptions of, well, they made all this money, where'd the money go? It may have went to print costs or shipping costs, because that's what it costs. So they probably didn't even make all that money, right? People are like, oh my gosh, they funded for $100,000. It's like, yeah, that's like burnt money gone. It's out of there. Like, they didn't see any of it. But then you have some that are the serial Kickstarters. This is what I'm talking about, right? You're seeing they're now making multiple companies to do it. This is a problem. This is why I'm saying Kickstarter is not viable. It's not. But it is required, because now the transparency is being demanded by the consumer, which I get. We want transparency. But then on top of that, it's now forcing them to do some kind of shady things, right? So either as a company, you need to not do the shady things, and in some cases you may not even be able to perform or show transparency. So then that makes you automatically look bad. It just gives more money to the bigger guns. That's it. Game over, you lose, right? So it's all about the strategy at that point, which is why I'm sharing this with y'all. I'm sharing a strategy with y'all to say, hey, if you can't make multiple companies to kind of, go back behind Kickstarter and be like, oh, hey, I'm like wearing my, my disguise, the glasses, the nose, and the mustache. I'm not Smunchy Games. I'm, Boris, I don't know, Gudorov or something. Hi, this is my thing. Okay, you're approved. Flagged. You're good to go. So that's another way to do it. Now, if you're not negotiating with them, right? It's not fun. Red says, couldn't resist. Yinzi says, whatever I want games, let's go. TLDR Money Talks. Yeah, absolutely. Ninja Simone, Assassin Cinnamon. Dude, that would be legit. I could see that, Miriori. That'd be awesome. Is there another chat open somewhere, says Yunzi. What do you mean? For when I'm talking with y'all? I don't know. I can't hear anything. I have my volume up, so. Red says, Assassin Man, where you gonna run to? Assassin Man, where you gonna run to? Oh yeah, the lyrics, that's great. Harker, I kinda want to do something in yen. I think that's yen, just to mess with people. That'd be fun. Clever, real shady. Yeah, says Yinzi. At that point, you have to notice it's not in USD, right? Hopefully. FYI, Monopoly recently replaced Passgo with Go Crowdfund. Oh, jeez. Oh, facts, burnt money. Yeah, I don't see all the comments you're reading. Oh, it's in Twitch chat that I'm reading. So I don't know if you're in Twitch or somewhere else, but because I know I have Restream going. But yeah, so I'm reading in Twitch chat. We're also streaming to Facebook right now, and we're also streaming to YouTube. So I don't know, somewhere around there. But that's kind of why I'm like, I'm documenting this. I'm just showing you what it is, you know. And, you know, if Zweihander and Anders McNeil see this, hopefully you're not too upset. But I kind of had to use you as an example. So, you know, and to be fair, I just want to say I get why they're doing it. You know, maybe they're not, these guys aren't in bed with Kickstarter, which is probably why they have to do that. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of giving them, I'm going to now give them a bit of the benefit of the doubt and say they may have to do this because Kickstarter shut them out. And they were like, no, sorry. Because crowdfunding is that powerful now. Kickstarter is that powerful now. Crowdfunding, specifically Kickstarter, has that much power. It's like saying D&D for RPGs. Hey, you want to go play tabletop RPGs? Yeah, let's go play some D&D, and then you go play, like, I don't know, Blades in the Dark. Right? Here it's like, we're going to go crowdfund something. Oh, okay, you're going to Kickstarter it? Yeah, cool. We're going to we're going to do some Kickstartering. But that's kind of what this is. So there's a brand effect happening, right? So I'm going to give them that benefit of the doubt because I don't really know what they're going through. I'm just letting you know that I see this a lot, right? But then you'll end up seeing like companies that are in fact using this in that way. Now, I don't know if Cool Mini or Not is anymore. I have seen them do some pretty crazy things back in the day. 50 created, holy frickin' crap. But like, you know, and this is like board game sphere here, right? So, I don't know, like, how fast they're delivering these. I also, like, oh man, I can see, I didn't even realize they were partnering with some of these people. Trudvang Legends, that makes sense now. I just don't know. I don't know, right? Like, I know Call of Cthulhu, or the Cthulhu Death May Die, was originally a Colossal game, which then was brought into Cool Mini or Not. You know, some of these are really old actually. So I don't know, maybe they're delivering on time. Maybe they're just like, hey Smunchy, get good. You're not delivering fast enough. Sorry. That could be a thing too. I don't know. I just know what I'm seeing. This is what I'm witnessing. So, but at least for us, and that's why I've shown you this letter, we've been rejected. So, that's how that's going. Yunzi says, yeah, I don't see all the comments you're reading. Oh, okay. It's like your mom calling all the video games Nintendo or Atari. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Cool Mini or Not is very board game centric. Yeah. I mean, so to be fair, I chat with them all the time. I do know who I know the owner. They're also quite large, being based in China with great connections, has massive advantages. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the owner and some of the founders work with Razer. So if you support Razer, that's a part of their thing, or used to, something like that. And then, they have their hands everywhere. Like they're entrepreneurs, they're business people. You know, I get it. Cool Mini or Not delivers fairly on time, from what I understand. Cool. Yeah. So then they nailed down the production. That's why they can do it, right? So all of that said, I'm showing you this though because that is what's going on. That's what's going on in this world right now. In our world, our little industry. So, you know, it's not viable. So now I have to figure out after sales. So my viable outcome. So my viable outcome is at least all of these 4 options. I don't have to set up another tool. I don't have to go somewhere else. I can just use it right here and then do a closeout strategy and then spin a new one up, right? Now, the part that makes this really hard, that some other people may be thinking, is like the numbers, right? Well, Cool Mini or Not has like, you know, 20,000 people who back them. Yeah, of course. Where someone who is smaller may have 300 people. So you would think that it's easier to fulfill for the 300. It's actually not. It's actually hard. It can be harder, but not as hard as like 20,000 unless they have the production, right? So then the production comes into play. All of that comes into play. And it just makes it difficult to really lock that down, because now you're talking about people, and you're adding to a new problem. So you're then instead adding to, well, broader industry issues. So I'll give you a good example, and this is something I try and avoid. A broader industry issue would be like, you know, maybe there's not as great OSHA standards being set for warehouse workers. I know Wormwood went through that recently. Y'all don't know who Wormwood is. They had a huge YouTube thing on it where Wormwood, they got called out by their investors, and they're like, hey, just so you know, your OSHA, there's a lot of safety hazards here. There's a lot of problems, and the original owners finally like had to kind of give in and be like, okay, we got to fix this, right? Our warehouse workers, they're not either making enough money, or they are doing things, not safe, right? So now you're contributing to bigger problems, though. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to solve both of those by doing what I'm doing. I'm making it to where I only need a specific amount of people to complete and make these projects happen. But I also don't want to grow so massively that things fall through the cracks and, I get blindsided by stuff, because that's not good either. It's not healthy for me. It's not healthy for the company. It's not healthy for them. So I want it to be a good environment. I want it to be those things, right? I don't want to have to enforce crunch. I hate crunch. I worked in the gaming industry for a while too, and it's just, I hate crunch so much, right? Like, people, you're so stressed out. I've been in that position. So like reducing crunch, reducing that, making sure there's like safety things that are proper, contracts are done properly, or there's like certain negotiation agreements, or whatever the case may be. I want to make sure that's all set up. I don't want to have to catch anyone with the fine print. I don't want to have to do that. So I'm also building on trust too. So that's another thing. 300 is like minimum, says UNZ, viable for a board game. Right. Yeah, where for like a tabletop RPG, you could probably get away with like 50 people. But all that said, like, that's kind of why I'm talking about this, is because I'm not also just showing you a strategy for how to make this on a shoestring budget, but I'm also showing you how to do it like right. I'm showing you how to care about people while you're doing it, if that makes sense. Which matters a lot, right? And of course, there's always going to be a lot of like NDA things that we don't know about. That's why you see things like show up on Twitter or Facebook all the time. Like, 10 years ago, this happened to me, and I didn't talk about it because of X, Y, and Z reason, out of fear. I don't like that either. So like, and who knows what's happening as we speak right now? I don't even know what's going on. Who knows who has had to agree to something that they've had to keep their mouth shut on, right? I'm very transparent about that stuff. I do not like that. So this is, if you want to like have a perfect representation of doing it right, this is it. It's really hard. And it makes it to where you have to, unfortunately, talk about stuff like this. You have to talk about those pains and those issues, and it makes people question, well, how come I couldn't do it this way and they could? It's probably because you're doing it in an ethical way. You're doing it in a way that you don't have to cut corners, or that you're working with what you got. That's something I don't talk about a lot, but I'm going to talk about that now, and that's just, there's a lot of companies that don't do that. They don't work with what they have. Instead, they will cut those corners. They will make it harder, for the people that work for them. They will end up, doing shady dealings, right? They'll have to even like go behind someone's back to get something. Like, I don't do that stuff. I'm never about that. I don't like Game of Thrones in that way. I like the show Game of Thrones. It's a good show. But that just causes more problems for me when all I want to do is make games, right? So I think that's whenever someone thinks of the word business. For me, I always think of business as it's just a tool for me. But I can understand why people get frustrated with that. So, but again, there's right and wrong ways to do it. So here, with the viable outcome for something like Shopify, Indiegogo, Patreon, Ko-Fi, you can make that happen. You can do it right. And you don't have to do the weird sneak around and make like 3 or 4 companies with Kickstarter. You don't have to go and have someone else do it somewhere else in another part of the world, which is probably why Kickstarter limits which countries can make Kickstarters. You know, there's a lot of those things. You don't have to sneak around and do that. You also don't have to negotiate with them and get in bed with them. You can use it as the service as it says, right? Or build your own brand. So let me look back in chat here. Harker says economies of scale, etc., etc. Talking with a lot of indie RPG people who mostly make zines. There's a middle ground which is really hard to ship for. 300 to 600 can be bad because you can usually do under 300 by hand, but past that it's difficult. Right? Yeah, you're gonna need fulfillment. I mean, that I'd say that's standard stuff. So that's your fulfillment team. 600 is at the point where outsourcing is probably viable. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say anything that you can't handle, you'd want to fulfill and outsource, right? You know, you don't want to. That's another thing. Making things easier for yourself without hurting others. There's a way to do that, for sure. And there's companies that exist, and they're very good at that. It's just understanding the money that comes from it too, right? Like, yeah, you're gonna have to pay more, but that also means then you're going to have a better strategy and a more viable outcome. So, and that's kind of why, like, all these things you see on the internet, like, if you were to go on Google today, how to run a Kickstarter, you're going to get, like, a million things, or how to run a crowdfunding campaign, or how to run a company, or whatever. And that's kind of why I'm sharing it this way, because you're hearing it from the reasons of why I'm doing this, and it's not just like, okay, can I retrofit this to me? This is a very specific thing right now that I'm talking about. And everyone deals with it. Everyone who is not doing weird things, I should say. Now, that's not to say those people also aren't working hard, or they also aren't doing those things. It's just, it's very different, right? And the one thing, and that's kind of why I always go back to like IPs whenever I talk about this stuff, is because I think people are missing the mark here. There's going to come a point in time where all of this that you see could collapse if people aren't actually selling, or people have missed an opportunity. So this is where this gets really, really interesting. Because we see this talked about a lot, where like, share other people's work so they have a better voice and opportunity, right? Yeah, you want to do that. But there's something missing here. And when you look at something that is considered popular, there are in fact ways to popularize something without it being good. And I think I've talked about this a little bit before, but there's some people who will find something, and yes, there's a subject of taste and matter of opinion and all that, but you can tell that it was kind of haphazardly put together, or the investors were pushing on the team, or whatever, right? We see that a lot in video games, for example. Like something gets released too fast, or there's a lot of pressure, right? Or whatever, like Destiny is a great example of that. You know, some of the Halo games had to go through that, right? And I'm just using what I know. You know, I know EA can do that all the time, right? So now we're moving into video games, which crowdfunding is in there too. And they're putting together these things over promising things. There's a lot of other weird stuff in there just to appease things and people. And I guess where I'm going with this is more of, they're pushing the games and things that they are believing people actually enjoy. But then they're also pushing like titles and IPs constantly, which is why you keep on, like, I'll give you a good example. Something that people in my family talk about all the time is like, they're just rehashing the same garbage over and over again. And yeah, they are. It's true. They are rehashing it over and over and over again, because they don't, one, they're afraid of investing in something that they know that may not sell, and then two, they're afraid of creating something new because they know they may lose money, right? So it's a pretty big risk. Now, I don't blame them for not wanting to take that risk. There are some things that if they're not validated, like, there's no money. No way. There's no investment, right? I'm the same way. I'm never going to invest in something that doesn't have a solid footing. But I still get risky, right? Like, I'm one of those creators and publishers and people that I want to invest in that. Now, here's kind of the same thing, though. How does that all tie in? So with my past talks and my past streams and all that, you've heard me talk about how to validate something, how to pre-validate, how to market it, right, in those ways. And I'm going to tie that into this. This is a great example. Here you're kind of experimenting so you can validate your stuff. But that's why they're using Kickstarter. Kickstarter is their validation point, right? I just said that a little bit ago. That's their investment point. They go, does this work? Well, if it's got funded and people want it, then we throw more money at it. That's what they're doing. That's why, like, Andrews McMeal, you saw do Blackbirds, or, what's their face? Magpie Games. That's why they invested in the Avatar license. Or Steamforged Games looked at Dark Souls, right? Yeah. So you can kind of see where that's happening. Or like Iron Kingdoms recently, Privateer Press started doing 5th edition work, and they've been around since like 2010, and they did War Machine and Hordes. So it's how they're doing it. It's how they're working on it. So if you're creating something brand new, that goes back to your overall strategy. And that's really why I'm talking about it that way. Harker says, when working at really small scales, ethics is kind of ignored, but really only for the creator. People often don't pay themselves so long as they can get by without it. However, they often do everything they can to pay others fairly. Triple threats have a massive advantage because they can do writing, layout, and art on extremely low budget. Sure. Well, like, to give you an example, I have never made a single dime off Smunchy Games for myself personally. I've made no money. So what does that say? Now, my people have been paid. I haven't. I've seen nothing. And that's because this industry doesn't allow for that, right? And in this way, I would have to do bigger numbers. I would have to find a way to make that happen faster if I wanted to do that. Now, to be fair here, there is something about knowing how to break into the industry, or any industry for that matter, and having unrealistic expectations. So I just kind of want to level set this. If you are someone who is breaking into something for the first time, you are going to obviously have a long road ahead of you. And if you want to get that footing in faster, there is a reason why volunteer and intern work exists. Because you kind of need to know what you're doing. But most importantly, you also need to show your value and your worth, more or less. Because it's going to be really hard. That goes back to trust, right? Like, if you just put up a Kickstarter or a Indiegogo or a pre-order, no one's going to trust you. They don't know you, right? So you need to earn that trust. Whether that's with a big company you work for, that can happen, or that is with a new business you're starting, or what have you. That's a thing. Trust, that's why I always say that relationship equity matters more than money, or gold even. It matters than anything else. Relationship equity matters. It's the most valuable thing that you can have. Now, that's not also me saying, like, go and be afraid if someone tries to, like, knock you down a peg or spread bad things about you or whatever, right? Or goes on a Twitter witch hunt. Because, believe it or not, those don't actually matter. They never do. But the things that do matter is what you're delivering and the quality you're delivering and how you're delivering it. it's different. And if I walked into tabletop like 8 years ago and just sought out the investors that I wanted and did all that, I could have forced a liking to my product purely by retail. Purely by retail. I could just go out and be like, hey, I'm going to drop 50K on the holding for, distribution center. Here's company distribution center. Here's 50,000. Hold my product. Thanks. Hey, Target. Hey, Walmart. Hey, big box store. Push it out to retail. Let's do a huge campaign event and do it that way and secure some big deals with other publishers or whomever, whatever. I could have done that. That's what it is by forcing it. And then people do get hyped about it because there are people who are legitimately interested in those things. So that's called forcing a sale. I don't know if you all ever heard that, but you can do that. And I wouldn't consider it unethical per se, but I would consider it, it's an easy way in, for sure. What it also does, though, is it doesn't validate your product. So what ends up happening is companies 5 years down the road go, how come this isn't selling anymore? How come it did really great in 2018, but it's doing terrible in 2022? I don't understand. Why is this falling apart? It's because they forced the sale, they didn't validate it, and they didn't plan for the long term. So that's what sucks. You don't want to do that because then you fall into a trap, right? A lot of board games do that, for sure. A lot of board games fall into that short-term trap. And a lot of video games fall into that short-term trap, too. Tabletop RPGs, it's weird because, they can fall into that trap, but it depends, right? It depends on how they're doing it, because digital is actually saving their face. So if you want to save face, digital is the best way to go about it. So you can be super risky on digital, and you can just constantly push out digital stuff. But with the others, where video games are digital, it's much harder because video games have a much larger lens and a spotlight on them, right? So here, forcing the sale, you don't have the budget to do that, right? So you're back to your shoestring. How do I get back? How do I climb up to anywhere so anyone will even notice me, right? And that's kind of what I'm talking about here. So you don't want to force the sale. You're going to validate it, and that's why your IP matters so much. Whatever it is you're doing, specifically in games, if you don't have that, you need to, right? And y'all have heard me preach on this forever, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but there are systems, which are the consoles of our game tabletop world, and then there are the settings, which are our games. And that all ties into this, and you're going to have a much harder time selling a system than you are a setting, for sure, guaranteed, which is why third-party sells so well. So here, if you're on a shoestring budget, there it is. Now, you have the zines, but the only thing with zines is that they have the Zine Quest other brand names tied to it. The problem is that market is so small, though, you're going to hit your ceiling very quickly. So if you want to, here we go back to area of focus, viable outcome, long term, I want to live on what I make and sell, your zine has to then hit a third-party system, or a primary system that you are third party. So if you make 5th edition zines, you can live on it, it's a viable outcome, and it's a long-term solution. If you are making zines to just make zines on your own stuff, you're gonna have a harder time. You have a lot of challenges, right? So then your shoestring budget doesn't return the ROI as fast as you would want it to, because you're not standing on the shoulder of giants, which the shoulders of the giants, in this case, so giants being like Wizards of the Coast and Paizo. And that's just the truth. That's just how anything works. You could replace Wizards of the Coast with Blizzard Entertainment or Bungie or Supergiant Games or Devolver Digital, whatever name you want, any brand, as long as it's a big brand and it's pulling in the attention of those people, you have to use them as, and they allow you to license. That's why licensing is a thing. You are going to have to really focus on those things. So again, all that said, and this isn't me to discourage you. Like, there's no hope. There is hope. The hope's here. I'm showing it to you. It takes a lot of work, but it's also going to it is going to require you to be a lot smarter with your money. It's also going to require you to be a lot smarter with your strategy. And that's where things like the organic piece here, working with and or for other companies, so partnering could be another thing. You want to do this, right? Goes back to relationship equity. So relationship equity can go on the other way as well, right? Where it's like, well, I want to do a 5th edition setting, but I want to help someone like Kobold Press, right? Or I want to help someone like Andrews McMeel, and I want to get into this like Century Gothic type of publishing. Cool. Well, go and apply to them as a writer. Go and apply to them as a game designer. Your chances are pretty slim, let's be real. But at the very least, you're out there and active, right? Go talk to people on Twitter. Go talk to people on Facebook. Go talk to people on Reddit. Go join Discord servers. Talk to those people. Half of you are here because I either know you from somewhere, or you followed me from somewhere, or you found me somewhere randomly, right? So, like, it works. We're here in Twitch talking right now. And I know that Twitch's discovery isn't that great for what I'm talking about right now, but I'm using Twitch because it's the easiest thing to reach y'all on. So, Harker says, would you mind posting the completed mural at the end somewhere we could access it? Yeah, absolutely. I'll post it in the Smunchy Games Discord. I'll put it in one of the public channels so y'all can reach that. And that's that's my whole goal, right? It's just helping y'all. I guess I just feel like I've come a long way from like 15 years ago, or even more now. I don't even know what year we're in sometimes. And after going through all these different things, like, I got a lot of bad advice. I got a lot of good advice. I listened to, some people I shouldn't have, and then I learned the hard way, right? And then there are some people I listened to that were great, and they had my best interest at heart. And that's kind of where I'm at. I do have your best interest at heart. It's kind of why I'm not like saying, hey, you should go and make a company purely based around Kickstarter, and I'm not focusing on all the details of how to run a Kickstarter campaign. I'm not focused on that because Kickstarter is only but one way to make things happen, right? And the reason why, now to be fair, what some of those people are writing about, like in their blog, they're focused on that because they're trying to pull people in to look at their blog and their website because they're trying to influence in a different way. Here, in my case, I'm already a business and a marketing influencer, right? I'm a UX influencer, too. I'm one of the best in the nation. And I know that for sure. After especially what just happened with Meta, Microsoft, and Google and Amazon. So it's like, I know I'm being like even headhunted right now. So I'm sharing this with y'all not because I'm looking for some kind of out or whatever the case may be. This is legitimately me saying, like, hey, I'm worried about our industry. Like I'm a part of probably about 7 or 8 industries, and tabletop games specifically is the smallest one, of course. But because it's so small, I'm legit worried about it. Like, I'm watching it, and I don't say this lightly. Like, there are a lot of things that can go really, really bad if we don't fix them. But even all the way from like a professional level to like audits, like if we got hit with an audit right now, like tons of different companies, I'm wondering how many of them would shut down. Just because of how, like, there's so many rules being broken. There's so many, like, I mean, I guess they just have to lawyer up or something. There's like so many things that are just like, conflicts of interest and like just ridiculous, crazy stuff. But then all the way down to the lowest of levels of like where, someone breaking into the industry, even just trying to like make something for the DMs Guild here. Let's go something popular, which people would go, oh, well, yeah, you could just hit it big off that. I mean, you really can't actually. Like, you're going to have to still market yourself. You're still going to have to do all these things, right? So like the DMs Guild has changed. Tabletop's mainstream now. And you're good luck getting that to happen, because there are even people on Twitter right now who are barely scraping by with 40,000 a year off the DMs Guild, right? And like, if you're someone who lives in California making 40,000 a year, oh, right? Like, oh damn. How are you eating, right? Like, how are you doing those things? And I'm using California as an example, but heck, even where I'm at here in Texas, like, we've exploded, right? The cost of living in the Austin area is insanely high. I mean, you have people dropping 1.5 million on homes now. And if you're like making 40,000 on the DMs Guild and trying to live in Austin, Texas, good luck. Like, no way. That goes back to, I want to live on what I make and sell. It's not going to happen. If you're someone in London, United Kingdom, no way. London's even more expensive than two of the places I just named. Like, that's not going to happen. You kidding me? Heck, even let's go to countries that are starting to blossom. Let's talk about Singapore. Singapore right now is still relatively cheap. In the next 5 to 10 years, that's all going to change. Singapore has Amazon out there. One of their main people are out there. Twitch, what I'm streaming on right now, their owner, two of their owners and co-founders are right now, they live in Singapore. And they have a massive ESL group out there, esports league. They are the largest in the world, Singapore. And they're exploding economically. And then tabletop, D&D, that is like spreading like wildfire over there in Singapore. So it's like, and they're just up and coming, you know? So like something like working on the DMs Guild for 40,000 a year, that's not going to work. Like, it's no longer just the United States. So Australia's getting hit. Trying to live in Sydney would be like a disaster. Like, it's just not going to happen on that budget. Yanzi says 40,000 a year in New Hampshire doesn't get you far. Agreed. For sure. Yep. So it's like that's why I'm talking like these hard numbers right now, because that's what these DMs Guilds people are making. And people are right now trying to bring them down for some reason. And I'm like, y'all are fighting amongst each other. Like, the people who you should really be focused on actually is yourself. Worry about yourself at the moment and see how you can partner with these people. See how you can help each other and help each other grow, and try and make this industry a better place, not just in an emotional way. Like, I'm all about emotional, mental health, all that. That's a big thing for me too. Like, my wife, she tried to commit suicide last year, and we took her to where she needed to go, and I was a week alone with the kids. I'm labeled as her support person, and she's been doing great. I suffer from PTSD, so I'm all about mental health, but let's talk about some physical stuff too. Yeah, let's talk about like not being at each other's throats for really dumb things, especially when all of the people that are at each other's throats don't make any more than 80,000 a year. All right. I think that's a really bad idea, especially with our industry right now, because, man, we're hurting. We are hurting so bad. Like, there is growth. Don't get me wrong, there is growth. But that growth is not in money. That growth is in people. So, if you don't have the growth in money, you don't have an industry. And then there's nothing to sell, and then the industry's gone. Now, am I talking about extremes? Yes, I'm talking about extremes. But I am also talking in the way of, I care a lot about this industry because it's like my heart. Like, I love tabletop so much. It's in fact the only place that I can do anything with my imagination and play a game from my imagination. I really love that. And I don't want to see that disappear. I know right now we're dealing with a lot of shipping issues, for sure. That hurts. And I that's obviously why other board game companies are getting into tabletop RPGs, but like, I think we need to be working more together than against each other. because there could be a real possibility of you not fulfilling what you want to do if this is what you want to do. So now I'm tugging at some emotional heartstrings here, but I'm doing it on purpose because, you know, if you are someone who is really trying to get into this industry and do it full time, we economically cannot support it. Like, there's no way. Not even board games. Board games make millions, but I don't know. Here, let's go look at Cool Mini or Not salaries. There you go. Sales development representative, $42,000 a year. Oh, this is common salary. What am I looking at? That's wrong. They're public, right? They should be public. $2018 loses stock. Yeah, I know. Cool Mini or Not Glassdoor salaries. There's only 3 salary wages. Okay. Let's find out. What are we looking at? Yikes. Is this correct? Cool Mini or Not? Okay. Hopefully these aren't that old. Okay, let's see. Updated February 20th, 2021, last year. This is what we're looking at, right? Like, yeah, I mean, it's no wonder that most of these companies are side hustles, you know? Harker says, relatively cheap, LOL. Singapore is pretty insane, though, in terms of just being massively outsized in influence for their actual population. They're very prosperous. Yeah, they are. Yeah. I'd love to partner with you for TTRPG content. I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, and we can talk. And here, you know, I'm showing you this. Like, I think really why I'm like raising the red flag right now is that I think more partnerships need to happen with people and like understanding, like having that empathy for the other person and realizing that like we're at a point, because like even these big AAA folks that are coming in, like Warchief Gaming, which is basically Chris Metzen's Warcraft stuff, or like we're seeing licenses for Dark Souls or Warhammer or whatever. They're doing that because they're trying to run their company. But if even someone like Cool Mini or Not, who's literally pulling in millions upon millions of dollars, and this is what they pay, it means that it's not viable. So whenever someone looks at this pay and they go, well, they need to be paying more because they're pulling in millions of dollars, it's like, well, no, what's their expenditure? How much are they actually having to spend on this stuff? If they're pulling in $2 million and it takes them $1.7 million to make the game and ship it, that only leaves them $300,000 left at best. That's not even taxes, right? Like, so then $300K, you're looking at $16 to $17 an hour as an inside sales rep. Marketing coordinator, barely you're pushing $51K, right? So do not look at like these major costs because we don't know what the expenditure is. That's what makes this really, really hard. And that's why I'm really worried about our industry. Like, I'm super worried about it. Because someone, like, in my case, I can go into software and, you know, I can go, or heck, I can go make a mobile game. Right now, I can go make a mobile game application for $2,000. I can draw it. I'm an illustrator, right? I can go draw it right now. Which, by the way, I'm kind of sharing some inside things. I plan to do this, just so y'all know. I am going to go make a mobile game, $2,000, draw it up, get the developer to set it up the way I need it to, push it out. I'll have the source code, and then I'm not gonna, if they want to maintain it, then I pay them a maintenance salary, right? Or freelance it, 1099 it, I don't care, but I'm paying them to do that, and then I can make money hand over fist through just a mobile game. I don't have to be doing this, right? Go into software and make like I don't know, go make a little chat bot for Slack, right? Pitch that, pull in at least $500,000. It's not hard, right? So like there are tons of other industries. Heck, you could even go into finance. You could be an accountant. You can make more money as an accountant, right? all of those things. So there's tons of other industries that people don't need this. This is now, of course, I'm going to argue they need it because for someone who needs entertainment to help me mentally, I need this. But many would argue this is not a need, right? So let's find a way to help the industry as a whole. If that means, understanding someone like Andrews McMeel's situation better, then so be it. Like I pointed out that they're having to do this weird backwards thing. Why do they have to do that weird backwards thing? That shouldn't have to be a thing for anyone. I don't even care if they're Wizards of the Coast. It shouldn't be that. It shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to do that. Because the industry being so tiny, like we're literally. Think of it, I guess, like this. Like, here you go. I'll make a circle. We're gonna draw a circle. Here is your pie, right? TTRPG industry. Actually, let's go broader. Sorry, tabletop games. So you could be tabletop RPGs, board games, right, and make this a pie. But the truth is like this circle is huge to us. But then you have like games industry as a whole. And then this actually is like let's send this to the back. How do I send my layer back? This then becomes that. And all of this is like video games. There's like no reason to be in here. Truthfully, there's no reason. Might as well just go into the video game industry. But we're here because we love it, right? Like I'm here because I love it. I hope y'all are here because you love it as well and you enjoy it. But like we can find a way to make this do this instead. Right? We can find a way to make this grow, but you can't do it alone. Like those partnerships have to happen. People have to partner with one another. Like, if this shoestring budget, all of a sudden you're in a partnership, you're $500, and let's say you have 500, right? And let's say you then partner with like 3 or 4. This is where like that co-op mindset kind of comes in, where you don't have to do a co-op though. Your 500 turns into 1,500 as ROI. You get that back because your partnerships are scaling, right? This is kind of what we're doing here. So we don't want to hurt that, Okay, I'm looking back here. Arctis says, Yunzi, really? I assumed it to be one of the lower income states. We're talking about New Hampshire. Most of New England is pretty high cost of living. Southern New Hampshire median cost of living for a family of 4 is $83,000 a year. Yeah, which is really high, actually. You could go to Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Northern Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Nebraska, and probably Missouri, and live on $40,000 a year pretty easily. Not comfortably. I said easily though. Yunzi says, there's no way a company like Lucky Duck Games is not paying people decent wages. I think they have 35 people and sold nearly 1 million games last year, unless they net less than $2 per game on average. I don't know, right? I know Lucky Duck Games has had a wild success, but I also know where they came from. Like, I also know that the owner is someone who has ins with a lot of folks, a lot of partnerships, knows a lot of people in the industry, beyond tabletop games. So note that, just like I do. I know a lot of people outside. But in my case, I'm choosing to do this a little differently because I'm wanting to understand the pain. So Lucky Duck, I see their success and I applaud them for it. I'm sure they're paying people decently too. But I also don't know what went into how they did it. Because I know there's a lot of people who they do partner with who can have those weird things. and sometimes those partners gave really bad advice, and people ended up following that. So I don't know. That's not, again, it's not to bash them, because I don't know. I don't know. What I know is just what I saw, especially in those Facebook groups from like 5 years ago. So, but who knows? Maybe something's changed. Maybe they found a different way in. I don't know. I have no idea. I think the thing for me with something like Lucky Duck Games is I kind of see a force of sale there, personally. It's my own personal opinion. It's why they're having to constantly put games out in that way, because of the force of sale. I think the backing on Kickstarter happened because of the connections, if that makes sense. So, again, personal opinion. That's not a bad thing either. That's why I'm saying it's not like they're cheating. What I'm saying is that they didn't... There were a lot of other... Like, you're running a race, right? And when you're running this race, if you start with, $1,000 versus the person you're racing against starts with $1, the $1,000 person is going to have a bigger advantage. Which we all know that. We talk about that all the time in other things outside of the tabletop industry. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. What I am saying, though, is that then starts clicks. It starts Kickstarter. It starts things like that. And there's no opportunity for others to get in through a barrier. Now, the reason why, and I'm going to actually... This is a really interesting topic I want to talk about right now. The reason why I do not bash Wizards of the Coast as heavily as other people will is because Wizards of the Coast still has their Open Games license and they still have their SRD. The moment Wizards of the Coast rips that OGL and SRD away, I'm done with them. Like that. It's over. Because they know that they need the third-party people. If they do not have the third-party people, Wizards of the Coast is going to crumble. Board games do not have an OGL or an SRD, meaning they don't have a license in that way that anyone can just go and make them. So that makes this a little more complicated, right? Where the model I'm showing you here, this is going to work for tabletop RPG, more so. Board games get really difficult because you are forced to use your advantages. Does that make sense? So in tabletop RPGs, you can have no advantages at all. You can come from like straight up lower than poverty level and have $1 and still compete in the race. Board games, you cannot compete without money. You have to have money. Have to have money to start. And if you don't have the money to start, you are 100% going to fail in the long term. It's all black and white. There's no possible chance of winning. See what I mean? So that goes kind of deep, and I'll talk a little bit more about that if you'd like. Architectus. Sorry, I struggle sometimes with pronunciations. How much does Fantasy Flight pay its people? They usually run off of some pretty hefty licenses. Right, they probably pay decently. Let's see. Fantasy Flight Games salaries. Although I also knew they had to lay people off, too. A while ago for the Star Wars stuff. Oh. Okay. Here you go. This is a great freaking example. That's a good one to pull up, actually. So, they're not going to let me in unless I sign in. But we can look at this here. Game developer, $43,000 a year. Fantasy Flight's freaking huge, man. Here, the average salary of Fantasy Flight Games is $112,000 per year. Okay, let's look at comparably. Cool, $115,000 median. Right. However, who is getting that? At Fantasy Flight Games, the highest paid job is a general counsel at $278. Of course, general counsel would. They have to. $43,000 annually is the lowest. And that is for what, a sales rep? Yeah, CS rep. Average Fantasy Flight salary is about $91,000 a year. Okay. That's decent. I mean, that's not bad, really. Legal is the highest paid, of course. They would be. They'd have, or one of the average highest. They would have to, because Fantasy Flight gets into a lot of crap, right? Because like Asmodee has to deal with that stuff and all that fun things. Marketing, product, this makes sense. Yes, absolutely. Product's going to be paid the highest. IT, HR, finance, admin, BD, design. Here you go. You want to be a game designer at Fantasy Flight? You're going to be fourth lowest paid. Product is definitely where you want to go. Product is going to, I mean, heck, I do product stuff today. Products, yeah, marketing, yep, design, there you are. So, choose wisely. But that's because really what's making this happen is the product, operations, marketing, legal, and sales. These are the people that are actually making the game sell. So, that's pretty interesting. Well, you're also paying hefty license fees. Oh, right. Yeah, that's true too. You are paying some pretty hefty license fees with Fantasy Flight, right? Like, they have to with those license fees. Now, of course, they could negotiate something, though. They could negotiate a license fee where they say, hey, they take 60%, we'll take 40%, right? But it also depends on how their model's operating, because I don't know their model, right? Like, how they're doing this. So it's funny that this says average compensation, because that can't be average. Unless their average is literally all of their product people, and they're, like, owners. Yunzi also says, yeah, they grew meteorically. I think you're probably right. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of true, right? Like with Smunchy games, I started at the bottom. Like, I didn't want to, like, I had a bunch of people asking me, they're like, how come you don't license anything? And I was like, well, I could license, you know, like, I sent an email to Studio Wildcard for Ark a long time ago. I sent out an email to Devolver Digital for Death's Door, actually recently, just because I was interested in it. I could license it, but I don't know. They haven't responded. But that's not to say I couldn't work out a licensing deal somewhere else. It's just, I don't know. I have this thing where I want to see if I can make it happen on a shoestring budget in this type of environment. It's a nice challenge for me. Because if I can do it, then my whole goal is I get to help all of you do it. That's why I'm doing this. Like, I don't want to just throw cash at and force the sale. I don't want to force the sale. I think that's, like, not fun at all. Like, even, like, other marketing ploys, like, I don't want to use, you know, emotional damage or trauma to my advantage. I don't want to use that type of stuff. I don't want people to pity me. I don't want them to, let's go in that way. I don't want to use that, and I don't want to use the other. I don't want to use the rich money thing. I don't want that. I want them to enjoy the games we make, because that is going to provide the strongest community, the strongest outcome, and the strongest viable sense of longevity. That's what I want, right? I'm just gonna call you Ark. Ark. No, my username is just a pain. Got it. Ark says, yeah, they're the ones I grew up with too. Yunzi says, Lucky Duck. Got it. Harker says, Death's Door is really cool. I don't know if Devolver licenses, though. They do license, for sure. Yep. Them, Supergiant, all of them license. And they're the indies. So, I may license someday myself, but depends if I get there or not. Let's see here. So, let's go back to this. So this is the salaries of, like, Fantasy Flight. Product makes sense. This honestly makes sense in sales. This makes a lot of sense to me. They're also operating, though, under Asmodee, right? Like, they're a subsidiary company. So they're one of many. Asmodee being the largest in board games. Where in tabletop, we're like WotC and Paizo, right? So, in Games Workshop. So, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, that's kind of why I'm sharing this with all of you. Like, here's the culture, right? They got a culture rating. Manager, diversity, leadership, work culture. That's not good. Rate your CEO. That's interesting. Fantasy Flight Games employees are 34% more likely to recommend Fantasy Flight Games as a great place to work. That's not that great of a rating, though. I mean, it says top 30%, but man, yeah, I don't know. To me, like they're gonna rate this as a B in their grading for comparably, but I think it could be better. Anyway, all that said, like this goes back to what I was talking about as the industry, though. The industry is in trouble. Like, if you only have one company sucking everyone up, like that's not good either, right? So you don't want that to happen. And that's not to say you don't want to partner with them. So that's another thing I want to actually just highlight real quick. I don't want you to think that you shouldn't partner with them. You should. You should also work on your own things too. So you should do both. And that's like the best possible outcome, viable outcome right here. So your best possible viable outcome is to work with other partners and work on your own things. Because what ends up happening then is you're helping yourself, but then you're also helping them, and you're helping everyone else, though. So everyone always asks, like, how can we help others do things better? Well, actually, if you want to help other people, partner with the bigger companies. Start doing that. Partner with those around you as well, assuming y'all get along well and things like that. But partner with them, because then what you're doing is you're creating a space for others to then enter through it, right? So like, let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, Steam. So like, when you come to Steam is a platform that has now made it to where indies can just publish things out. Sure, you have these major deals, and sure, not all these games are played, and most of them probably will never be looked at. But they're entering the industry in this way, and then they can say, oh, by the way, I launched this game. Can I partner with you? I don't know, Devolver Digital. They'll go, oh yeah, hey, sure, we can talk about that. You kind of know what you're doing, right? So this Steam is offered now as a platform in this way. That's kind of what Kickstarter was trying to do. But Kickstarter is not Steam at all. It's we compare it that way. I've been guilty of it too. It's not. It's not, because it's so hard to... I mean, you're going to have one campaign? Like, man, that sucks. Gungeon. Yes, Enter the Gungeon. I think that's Devolver, right? Yeah. Bear says I would die to write for Death's Door because that would help my research. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So that's why, like, I would say, when it comes to things like Wizards of the Coast, let's go on ahead and look at the big beast here. They're killing it right now. Yeah, they're owned by Hasbro, and Hasbro is massive. But it says something when in tabletop RPGs that the biggest company in tabletop RPGs is owned by a major toy maker. I want that to set in, so I'm going to say it one more time. I'm going to say it slowly. The biggest company in tabletop RPGs is owned by a toy maker. That's actually how small this industry really is. Where at least in board games, like, board games has Asmodee, right? So they can point to that and be like, hey, board games make money because Asmodee, they're huge and they own all the board game companies and they make board games. But Hasbro, like, sure, they make Monopoly, but like, look at this. They're a toy maker. Now, again, I love toys. I'm not bashing toys here. Like, we're actually about to start doing some plushies, by the way. Secret. Don't tell anyone. Actually, tell everyone. But, they're owned by them. So when and that's why I'm going to go back to this again, the partnering bit. So if people are picking each other off over Wizards of the Coast, where is the hope for tabletop RPGs in that way, right? Like, long term. And the hope is there. It's gotta happen. All Harker says, I really want to see a Death Store RPG made in, why can't I think about that? Forged in the Dark. Yes, me too. I love that system so much. It's right behind me, right up there. Honestly, sounds like Kickstarter wants to use blockchain to do something like Steam, but it's like, at that point, why do you need blockchain? Right. So, okay. So we can talk about that now. Let's go all the way back to that. So, blockchain. Alright, let me move this off to the side, and I'll shrink this down. So, here's the thing with the blockchain, right? I am not, and I'm just going to tell you all right now, I'm not like against blockchains. I'm not against NFTs. I'm not exactly for them though either. In a way, I guess that could make me a centrist. But the reality of this is that there is good and bad with everything. You know, crypto was initially meant to really help people in a situation that had nothing. That's why investors started investing in general. And by investors, I don't mean like big dollar investors. I mean, you know, Carl down the road who runs your local gas station. That guy. So it was meant to deter from the US dollar, because the US dollar was, well, I mean, it's $1, right? And we already have Forex, we already have a worldwide currency. But there were, you know, other people who believed in different things, and we don't have to get into that. But I can tell you that I'm not against blockchain. I get it. I have crypto myself. But I am not so excited about it for Kickstarter. That's where things go weird for me. Because I understand how it works, I think is why I kind of felt a pain. It's one thing for crypto to have the currency exchange and create their NFTs. Like, artists, cool, I'm proud of them. You know, they went out and were able to make some artwork, and they got something off of it. And of course, bad things happened too. People stole artwork and made their own NFTs. That's like everything in life. There's going to always be good and bad. However, the thing about Kickstarter that really bothered me was the fact that it was crowdfunding, and they limit you already. So when the blockchain, if that's what they're trying to do with Steam, it's like, cool, great, that's admirable that they want to perform something like Steam, but because the limiters are there, it automatically crunches down anyone trying to break in. So then really what's happening is the blockchain and the NFTs that Kickstarter is trying to spin up only benefits those who are in bed with them. It doesn't benefit anyone else. That is literally a cash grab. That's exactly what it is. And, you know, people have argued in other ways about it, but, like, I can tell you right now, like, I could go do that. Like, they have, there's something called, have you heard of it? I think it's called Vimy. I think there was a huge thing about it with Chaosium recently, right? Is it Vimo? No, it's not Vimo. Vivi. There we go. So if you don't know what Vivi is, here, let's remove Chaosium. Let's do Vivi. So Vivi is all about digital collectibles. I actually downloaded the app the other day, and I was like messing around with it. I wanted to understand how this worked. So really the way it works is they partner with collectible, you know, companies that are big named, and then they take animations or comic books or like other whatever collectible things in image form, and then put a price to it. And then the drops is where the company will launch it, and then someone can go and immediately buy it. Problem with this method, just to be honest with you, is a bot can easily harvest this very quickly, find the drop immediately, set up the bot to work through the oh my god, I'm using like old terms now, the worker, more or less, right? And then pull that in and then immediately buy it, right? So you don't got a chance, you don't got a shot in hell, right, to actually purchase that. So then what they do instead is they foster their economy, their app economy of the people who purchase these things, and then people can buy from other people. So think of it, the best way I can explain this now, because we're all nerds here, Best way I can explain it is Magic the Gathering or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh. New booster box drops or new, setting drops or whatever, right? And people are scrounging to buy all these cards, and there's only limited cards of certain types, right? And then once you find those cards, then you sell those back, right? Like, oh, I found a Black Lotus, right? Or whatever that Magic card is. That's like worth $5,000. It's one of 7 in the world, right? That's what NFTs are. That's how they work. So in this case, with collectibles, you have that collectible there for you. Now, I'm not against stuff like this. Like, if that's what people want to do, that's cool. Like, you're collecting stuff. But when you pair this with Kickstarter, it's like, holy crap. Like, that opens up a whole new realm of WTF, mate. Because when they are doing those negotiations, and they're meant to help the people fund through crowdfunding, this can go sideways really, really quick, right? So you're talking about, like, here's this collectible, or, like, that's what the whole thing was with Chaosium. I think people just didn't understand really what's going on with that. I kind of got it. I was like, okay, whatever. They're going to put Cthulhu on VV. Cool. Where it goes bad, though, is when they use something like Kickstarter. Because now what you're saying is, okay, everyone, you're going to invest into this one thing. The people at the very top benefit, the people at the bottom don't. And, like, you could argue capitalism's like that, but at least with capitalism, you do have a way in. Just like tabletop RPGs. In fact, tabletop RPGs and capitalism, they're no different. The way the system works. But something like this, when you add crowdfunding into this with a blockchain, and then you try and do Steam like effects, there's no way in for anyone. So, like, our shoestring budget person here, who, you know what, let's name this person. Let's give them a persona. Let's call them Priya. Priya's a really great Indian name. And let's say Priya, she's working on this budget, right? Okay. Priya is going to have a really hard hell of a time now with Kickstarter, because all of a sudden this is going to attract major investors, and they're going to just start throwing cash into Kickstarter. What's to stop Kickstarter from saying, hey, I'm already limiting your campaigns, Indie. Guess what? If you don't pay in or do something otherwise, you can't even run a campaign now. Nothing's stopping them from doing that. That's really scary, right? Especially if you depend on it. That's why we're talking about this stuff. That's why I was like, I know it's all going to tie back to blockchain here sooner or later. Let's see here. I missed a couple things. Minis are just toys at the end of the day, right? Says Yunzi. Maybe. I mean, I have a ton of minis on my shelf. The thing is, though, with board games, like, if I'm going to buy minis, I'm going to go through, like, Games Workshop or a 3D printer. Or, like, I want to 3D print my own. Or use someone on, what's that place called? Mini Maker? Maker Bot? No, Maker's Place? Shoot. Mini Maker. I forgot what it's called, but it's like... Here, wait. Arcane Minis. I bet I can find them. Here we go. Here we go, yeah. These guys are really cool. They have a... Where is it? Is it this one? Skies of Sordain. Here we go. No, that's not it. Dang it. There's like a mini creation place. But this is where I want to go get my minis. I want to find these people. Amongst other people. But anyway, that's not the point here. Let's move back to this. So, Harker says, Chaosium tried to do NFTs, but they ended up backing out after Backlash. Well, yeah. And to be fair, I think most of the people who are backlashing don't actually understand it, to be honest with you. But I also think that NFTs, like for me, I don't plan to do NFTs for Smunchy games. I'm going to leave that up to the artist. If they want to, Now, granted, I own the artwork, but that's not going to stop me from helping them. See, I guess that maybe that's just my mindset. I just want to help people. Like, I'm not... I don't know. That's just how I think. I see NFT... Well, we'll come back to that with Chaosium, though. I think there's actually more to unpack. Yunzi says, I see NFT being interesting if that token actually does something, gives access, or can foster community in some way, or is tied to automatically to some kind of revenue generation around that IP. Yeah, right. Like, they're using it... think of it like, again, Magic the Gathering. You know, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pokemon. They're using the NFT to drive collectors that are major fans about this thing. Because here's the thing, Vivi, like... Chaosium didn't really make anything off that. Like, money-wise, they just didn't really make a whole lot of cash. Because when they sell these licensed partnerships, like, sure, they probably made money off the license, which makes sense, but it probably wasn't enough. For someone like Chaosium... Okay, let's look at this. Chaosium Inc. revenue. Are they public? Do they publish it? Can we estimate it? Owler, Zoom Info. Let's look at Zoom Info. Maybe they have an estimation. So the revenue they say is 32 million. Is that true? Let's see. Oh, number of employees. Okay, this is more like it. Yeah. This makes more sense. I usually use Owler more anyway, but... Yeah, and then their HQ's in freaking San Francisco. It's in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. Yeah, good luck. Hell no, I'm not paying those premiums. Like for a headquarter, a building. So they only have like 25 to 100 maybe. Agree? But they're like, they could be pulling in 5 million. That's not a lot. Like, for someone that size... See, now they're saying Chaosium Inc. has 5 employees. Let's just go to LinkedIn. Screw it. I'm going to go deep. Cool. Chaosium Inc. They don't even have 1,000 followers on LinkedIn. They have 33 employees on LinkedIn. Wow. I have no growth for total headcount. Yeah. They're not that big. Like, they're not as big as people claim them to be. Yeah, there you go. 11 to 50. They're tiny, man. Chaosium is really small. I would say Modifius, yeah, is probably bigger than Chaosium. Wizards, obviously. Cubicle 7. I mean, that's like... I don't get it. I mean, I get why they were upset, but I kind of don't understand. They're not making enough to be a threat. But I could see it the other way, though. See, that's why I'm like, I didn't like dive too deep into it originally, because I do understand the outrage, though. I get why, because it can feed what I'm talking about right now. It can feed things like Kickstarter to actually make this far worse than it already is. So that's kind of why I'm like, well, I get it, you know. Let's see. I was more joking, but of course there's a crossover on minis versus toys. Yeah. Harker says, the way NFTs work is literally unforceable, though. You can't do digital ownership on a large scale without DRM, and NFTs don't have that in any aspect. They do have that, actually. So, NFTs have a signature. And through the digital signature, you are able to confirm the non-fungible token. Absolutely. Which actually means it's legible and you can use it if approved by like any government. So you could even trade them like for even 4x. You could do 4x trading with NFT, technically, because it has a signature tied to it. So as long as it has a signature, because we have crypto, or not crypto, but encrypted two-way encryption, you are absolutely can do that. Like we even have chat messengers today, like Signal, that are encrypted, and Signal doesn't need, like they're all private, and they're locked down. No one's going to be able to decrypt it. NFTs run the same way. So it's going to be really hard for I just being honest with you, it's going to be really hard to remove NFTs. They're not going anywhere. Unless, notice how I do that. Unless it is viewed as like TY Beanie Babies or Magic the Gathering. If it is viewed in that way, then what ends up happening is you have the hype effect or the FOMO effect, right? So fear of missing out, hype, whatever you want to call it. It's really hot for like, X amount of years, and it just dies because no one's investing in it. So that could happen. That could truly be a thing. But, yeah, here we go. In a few weeks, the rave went live. Fear of missing out. Propaganda and hypes. Hundreds of Ethereum coins for a tweet? Right. So this is what I'm talking about. That could happen. But the reality is it depends. We don't know. We don't actually know because we're not in the future. So that's why everyone's talking about it now, and they're like, should I invest? The way I'm looking at NFTs, I'm looking at them like VV. They're collectibles. So at the end of the day, they could matter. But here's the thing. This is the only way to secure them to actually make them matter, and this is going to be up to our government, truthfully. As well as any like decentralization, crypto signatures, all that. Companies have to accept the non-fungible token as a way to trade for cash. Because a signature is tied to an NFT, it is absolutely like a piece of property. So with that signature, it'll be read, and when you cash it out, you can get like $30,000 off your NFT. It turns into real cash, right? But I don't know like transaction fees. I don't know all that stuff because like the companies have to do that, and then it has to go through processing. So that's still what makes NFTs viable as a view for long term. That's why there's a huge argument about it right now, right? That's why it's like controversial because of that reason. Now there's other reasons, like environment, health of our environment, all those things too, which makes sense, and I get it. But then you also have another strong argument for, well, who would you rather have controlling your cash? Do you really want these people to control it, or do you want to control it, right? So that kind of depends on where you sit. Again, for myself, like I said, I don't see a problem with them unless they get into something like Kickstarter, or they get into something like I know I myself, I won't do NFTs for Smunchy games. That's just how I am. That's how I feel. I don't want someone to have to own that as a collectible, because I kind of think it's sort of silly, but I also don't see it as a good long-term investment. I see that as you're running a risk right now, and that's just me. I'm very risk adverse in that way, where you're looking at it like a TY Beanie Baby collection, or you're looking at it like a Magic the Gathering card, and you're hoping that one day, or like a Pokemon card, my Lugia is going to be, or my Charizard is going to be worth millions of dollars, right? The only, again, thing that ties it is you can actually cash it out if they allow that. That's the difference. So we'll go back to that though. Blockchain could be used for cool stuff after it's regulated, to be less Wild West and rug pulley, and isn't equivalent to burning acreage of rainforest to mine. Yeah, like that last part is a valid point, right? Oh, the environment piece, that is something that needs to be figured out. But see, here's where this gets really interesting. So the argument would then be, like the way I'm thinking about it is, if for some reason all of a sudden we went green and everything's powered by solar and wind, are NFTs all of a sudden bad? And that's kind of what you got to ask yourself. Because technically, no, right? Like, they're always going to be Wild West because that was the whole point of cryptocurrency. They didn't want the government to control it. They didn't want that. Because if it was too controlled, then no one can get in. And that's what I'm talking about even now. If it's too controlled, no one can get in. There's no way of getting in. You are stuck at the bottom permanently. So you need a way to run the race. But that's why the question comes up. So if it went green, is it possible? But right now, in our current time, yeah, I get it. Like, you don't want to kill our Earth, right? Harker says right now blockchain is pretty untenable. The interests of those who currently control and use blockchain do not line up with the wider possible user base. It's just too tied into the bigger fool scheme and the hype economy. Right. Yeah. That's what I meant by like Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, TY Beanie Babies. That's what it is. It's they're creating a TCG, but for NFTs. That's all they did. And it's tied to real money because of the signature. So that's where it's like, oh, well, damn. And that's why it's like, do you invest in it? Because it's like it could just crash, and you're like, well, I don't see a purpose, I don't know. It just depends on who you are there. The actual content is located off NFTs, though. It's really only a receipt for the content. Yeah. I mean, that signature kind of comes in. Digital real estate is only going to grow. Oh, yeah, let's talk about that. Decentraland. I don't know if y'all have heard of this, but this is a big deal. So, Decentraland is a game, but it's a game that uses cryptocurrency and NFTs and money and all that. This game, though, because it has signatures and it's tied in the way that it is, it only has a finite amount of things. And it is decentralized. That means that no one can ever control it. No one even owns it. It's like our real world, actually. So they found a way to replicate it, which kind of sounds scary. You start getting into the Matrix thing, but no one actually owns the society, which is interesting. So I think Barbados actually put their ambassador, like their embassy, in here. Like their real embassy, you can actually extend your visa through Decentraland, which is really interesting. And then also Samsung put in a store in here, like a real store where you can just purchase stuff for your phone. You can actually order, like you can even pay your bill through here. It's really weird, but Decentraland, and then they use the Mana Coin, I think is what it's called. And there are people who make 3D artists. They come into Decentraland, and they work for someone who owns like this. Like you're seeing these blocks behind here. These are actual plots of digital land that people own, and they are tied to a signature like an NFT or like cryptocurrency, and they own them because it's a finite amount of space. And they then put their stores and things on there, and then artists and other people will show up, and they'll make 3D models and sell their stuff in these stores. And I had a friend of mine who was talking about, because he's a 3D artist, and he kind of just got big recently. He's from the Bronx, Bronx, New York. He grew up in the ghettos and poverty, right? And he's like, man, this has been the best thing I've ever had happen for me. And he goes, I go in there, I'll create these 3D art pieces, and people will buy the clothes for their avatars. And he's like, I'm pulling out what do you say, $2,000 a week, just off this. So, and he's finally able to make a life for his family through that. So that's kind of how he views it. And but with Decentraland, anyway, my point here is that I think this is what Kickstarter is trying to do. They're trying to do something like that mixed with Steam, but it won't work because Decentraland is decentralized. No one owns it. Someone owns Kickstarter. This is actually the same problem with Facebook. Facebook, Meta, Oh my god. So someone owns that, right? And that's like the big issue is like someone like Zuckerberg could absolutely say, "Hey, guess what? Your stuff's mine now." He could also say like, "Hey, we're gonna shut down, and now you lose everything, and we lose everything," right? Where Decentraland, you can't shut it down. Like, unless I guess you pull all the cords in the entire world. It uses the cloud. So, there's no other real way to do that. That's why this is so fascinating. NFTs do suffer from absurd inflation. I agree with that, for sure. Harker says, you can do DRM for the token, just not for the content itself. You can very much create two NFTs for the same image. You can, but they have to be a pixel apart. You can like have the same image, but one pixel has to be different. It actually reads that signature. So when it reads that, the pixels matter, I guess, is like what they say. But you can, of course, copyright and trademark your work. You can do that too. So like this, the things you see here, if there's like a very specific design for this jacket, and that's your work, your fashion work, you own that. Like, there's a difference between like a patterning like this, which someone can't really own, versus like something very specific tied to like IP, as an example. If that's why this gets hairy, because like you can own the jacket with like Cthulhu's face on it, but if it's the Chaosium Cthulhu face, you own the NFT based on the signature. You don't own that Cthulhu. That's where it's different. So there are laws in place for that, for sure. And that's why like everyone's like, hey, why don't you do this? I was like, no, not really. Meta charges taxes on the metaverse. Oh yeah, Meta charges. I see what you did. Meta charges taxes on the metaverse. Yeah, they totally could. They could for sure. Yeah. Like, why wouldn't they? You know? So like, I know I can tell you personally, so I'm just going to share some personal stuff with y'all now. I was actually offered at one point to work with the Meta teams. I turned them down. I just don't think it's right for like, if you're going to do this type of stuff with like stuff like owning digital worlds and lands and things like that, and like plots, and then just like this one person owns it all. I'm not okay. Like, I'm not that ethically. I'm not okay with that in that way. Decentraland I can get behind because it's something that is like our society, right? Where anyone can go and buy land and put up a brick and mortar store and sell their goods. Makes sense, right? There's a finite amount of space. Cool. Like, you own it and you pay the taxes to the government. Got it. All right. Where it's kind of like that way in Decentraland, right? So you go and you buy your plot of land, or you buy a storefront, or you rent, or you lease, or whatever, right? It's the same thing like our real world. But you own it. You own that, and no one else can take that from you. So that sounds much better to me. Now, if we can fix the whole like environment thing, then we're good to go. But yeah. Yunzi says that is the core idea behind Web3. Oh yeah, for sure. Yep. And here's hoping it plays out, you know, in that way too. Harker says, oh wait, no, I missed Bear here. I'm stoked for the Supreme Court case to see if eminent domain extends to metaverses. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting, right? I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated too. Harker says, probably if it's treated as property, then it's likely that the government would like to have a hand in being able to influence it. Yeah. And that's actually another reason why, though, I think the crypto piece makes sense, because the inflation and the way the Wild West piece works with that, I kind of understand it. I think the only thing that I would, if I had a choice to fix it, which I obviously don't, And if I had any control over that, I think what I would do though is I'd put in a failsafe, instead of like there's a better way for that, and I think I would have put in some like reset buttons, if that makes sense. Where not like reset buttons on like your coin or any ownership, no, but like, is there a way, as game designers, there's ways to come back, right? So like if you're down by X amount of points, or you're in an RPG and you're getting your butt kicked by like the creature that the GM has thrown at you, there is a way to come back, right? And I kind of feel like we need those in place. But yeah. Good job turning down Satan, says Yunzi. Thank you. Yeah. I know. Like, it's weird. I'm just so particular on what I work on. Because I want better. I just want better for our world. Like I can get behind Decentraland because I see what they're doing. I get it. They're trying to make society in here. And because it's the way it is. Yeah, I don't know. Now you can invest in the mana coin too. That's a thing. But the reality is that where this is different than the Kickstarter stuff, with Kickstarter, again, they are limiting it. They own it, right? That bothers me so much. It's like, man, I don't want that type of gatekeeping, like that's not cool. I shouldn't have to jump through hoops to just get approved for something that I had put so much work into, just to be like, oh, sorry, not going to happen. But all these other people, we're going to let them do it. It's like, oh, okay, thanks. Let's see here. Bear says, a central issue I see in crypto remaining decentralized is it will be regulated if it becomes a substantial enough part of the economy, because governments aren't going to let currency fall out of their purview. No, absolutely. Well, actually, that's kind of why this is interesting, because Decentraland, while it's crypto right now, they're talking about USD as well, and other currencies too. So like yen and rupees and all those fun different AUD, fun different currency types. And I think that's why, like, they learned their lessons from the past, right? And that's, I think, why 4X is such a strong thing, because 4X is the ebb and flow of currency value. Same thing here. So your cryptos are just other currencies, where here the USD doesn't really change in that way, unless depending on like global economy. So it's almost kind of like a chain reaction, where you have the global economy influencing the crypto economy, which influences the Decentraland, and vice versa. But then once they go at the same level, right, where you have world global currencies with cryptocurrencies, that's kind of a different input. So there's that failsafe there. So I could see that happening. That's assuming they do that though, right? Like, that's me talking from an ideal state. I don't know. They're talking about it. We'll see if it happens, right? So I don't really know. There's no way to conquer NFT lands though. Not a fan. Decentraland is ultimately an equity-based social experiment, making it nearly as fair as life normally is. No one actually knows the long-term effects this will have on society, says Ark. Yeah, you're totally right. No idea. We have no idea. It's all an experiment. I mean, that's actually really the secret to everything. Everything's an experiment. So, which is kind of an interesting way to look at things, but that's really how life works. Anything new, you are always going to experiment with. There's never not going to be experiments. So if you know something's well established, like the RPG industry, I'm going to go make a zine. You're still experimenting with your own brand, right? You're still experimenting in that way. Here, this is at just a much larger scale experiment of how many people it can affect. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I guess I'll leave up to y'all. But I would also argue that you can't make progress or get anywhere without it. That's kind of like even just science, right? So discovery is pretty important. And I would say that it's better to experiment than not and never know. And, you know, unfortunately, I mean, that's life, right? Like, if we're going to go and explore planetary systems, we're going to have to experiment with how that works. And unfortunately, yes, human lives will be on that line. You know, it's up to that person, which is why, you know, we honor them as a noble cause, right? Like, I know I personally would never want to explore planetary things. Like, whoever's going to go, I'm going to send you packages. I'm going to send you... I'm going to help fund you get there. I'm going to make sure you're set up, but I would not put my life on the line for that personally. And if you are someone like that, you are much braver than I am. So, hats off to you. Which I can't take my hat off at the moment because I have my headset on. Ark says, I'm out. Peace. Alright, see you later. Thanks for joining. Harker says, I've got to go, but it's been an interesting talk. Cool. Awesome, thanks for joining. Yep, so just, yeah, sharing it all. What time is it? 1:14. Wow, I knew this was going to be a long talk. So yeah, I'll share this out with y'all too. I think I got a little bit longer in me. Also, I'm also just trying to quarantine away from getting sick at the moment. So, yeah, again, it's all about how it's going to go down, right? So you have to... So with this, right, coming all the way back to this, I'm going to pull you all the way back here. Back all the way here. Your shoestring budget. So you can now see, and I'm going to put this one in here. This is going to turn into an orange or red card. Tunnel vision. Don't have tunnel vision. This one's actually pretty critical. I have to do this a lot myself. Just as a person, if you're someone who's like, maybe you have ADHD, or, you know, maybe autism, or whatever the case may be, that can be, you know, you're someone who's already looking elsewhere. Like my wife, she's kind of in that realm, and it's hard. Because then, instead of not having tunnel vision because you can't focus, you're like, oh, there's too much, right? But in this case, I would say, when I say don't have tunnel vision, I'm speaking more from the thought of don't think that this is the only way to make it work. You know, I guess another way of saying it is be open-minded. But also don't get locked in so fast. Like, experiment, really, is what I'm trying to say. Understand that, like, what I'm showing you here, this is just a foundational thing. If you find something that is much better than this, then that's awesome. And if it works for you, then do that, right? So, like, in my case, I would say, you know, something that I do very differently is helping others in this way, but also the way I run Smunchy Games is just really different. No one else runs it like I do, or runs their companies like I do, I should say. There's some that come close, but like it's just different and it works for me. But that's because there's so many factors at play too, right? So I'm not saying like this is a source of truth. What I'm saying is this will help you lay the groundwork. So hopefully that helps as well. But having tunnel vision will get you locked into this, I have to only do it this way, and there's no other way to pull something in. So, like I mentioned, side hustles, those are like really important things to do. Your job, you know, your full-time job, that's important to do. You know, part-time, whatever works for you. Because this industry doesn't have enough spots for everyone to be full-time. It just doesn't exist. Because it's not big enough. It's too small. So I would say right now, while you're focused on your own games or whatever they are, absolutely diversify the way you're pulling in your revenue, or the way you're pulling in your income, really. I guess is a better way of saying it, right? And budget off what you need to, that you can. And I think the hardest part for me was even getting where I'm at now. So there was once upon a time where the only income I had, I had done pro gaming for a while, then I broke that contract, and then I had done some freelance work, but then that died. So then all I had left to my name was a Taco Bell shift manager role. That's why I'm saying, I really do understand where this comes from. So I was making $7.25 an hour, so $7.25 an hour at a local Taco Bell, where I was living. And we were living on, it was me, my wife, and my oldest daughter living on that. She was a baby at that time, so she was 6 months old. 6 months? No, even younger, because I had worked there for a little while, and we had nothing, right? So, and I had no one to reach out to either, so there was a point in time where, my wife's family helped us a lot, and now I'm just getting into personal story mode, but I promise it ties back into this. And her family helped. Mine did not. Mine didn't really help a whole lot. I had no one I could turn to and be like, "Hey, we're homeless. Can you help us?" That wasn't really a thing. Let's just be honest here. Except for through my wife's side, and I received little handouts here and there. We were on WIC, we were on food stamps, we were on welfare for sure. So it's and I'm just being real with y'all. This is what happened. Suffered from PTSD. Mine was really, really bad at that time. I was at what they called a level E, which is a Vietnam War vet. So I was doing 1,000-yard stares and things like that. It got really bad. Yeah. It was really bad for me. But then we're trying to survive and live. So it's I've done this already. I've done these things before. And there was at one point before I even met my wife where I was just homeless. I had nothing. So when when you're in those situations where you're how the heck do I make this work? You can totally make it work. It's just understanding there's a lot of things you're going to have to either sacrifice, and I don't mean the important things, ethics or whatever. I mean more you may just not be able to play that game today. You may not be able to go see that friend. You may not be able to go do those things. You may actually have to work. And that happens, right? And if you're going to diversify your income, then you're going to be doing extra work. And, in my case, in my situation, it wasn't until... Because that's kind of where this gets interesting, that it grew, it started really low and then grew really high and started low again. So I was originally working... I had a part-time job. I was working 20 hours a week. And then I went to a full-time, which was 40 hours a week. And then from the full-time, I went into... the full-time was 40 hours, but that was at the local Taco Bell, right? And then I was okay, I don't want to do these things anymore. I'm tired, I'm sick, I the paid time off, it's garbage, the sick days suck, and then on top of that, I can barely make rent, I can barely get food, right? So I'm oh, something's got to give, I got to change, something's got to change. And what actually ended up happening is that's when I actually started getting into software. So I started to understand, I actually just started reading a code book of Python. And by no means was I great at it. I wasn't the best. And I knew that. But I knew enough to get me out of that garbage that I was in. Um, and, you know, I learned a lot there too, but man, I dealt with a lot of crap as well. And then from there, that's when I started my own companies. Like I started doing some of my own freelance work. You know, I started pulling it together. So where at once upon a time, my day, and I'm just sharing all this with you because this is like goes back to shoestring budget here. There's kind of a thing here about discipline, right? And like self-discipline. It's really hard to do, and time management and understanding that that's really what goes into this. You know, for me, using these things, like if I didn't, like Kickstarter has helped Smunchy games a lot, but Kickstarter isn't the answer. It's not like the end all be all goal. It's not viable long term. So knowing what I know now, all the way back then, look at my situation, is me working at this local Taco Bell long term? No. No way, right? I can't feed a family on $7.25 an hour. You kidding me? So I have to do something. So what I ended up doing when I did get into software and I read that Python book, I actually still have it. I think I still have it around here, now that I think about it. Yep, here it is. Hold on. Let me grab this book. This is really, really old. This is an old book. So, Python Programming 3rd Edition for the Absolute Beginner. This is the book. This is the book I started with. And I started reading it, and I had a computer, and I was like, hey man, cool. Look, I even have the bookmark. Look at this. Oh man. I haven't pulled this bookmark out of this book for 14 years. Right here. This piece of paper. Let's see, what does this piece of paper even say on it? I don't even know what this says. www. something. Web design forums. Look, the writing is even fading. That's how old this is. So this is what I started with, and I started coding. I started learning how to do that, and then I applied to a job interview at a small startup company, and I got the job, and I was like nervous as hell, right? But when I ended up getting that job, I then started, like, of course I had to get out of my bad habits of, like, you know, staying up super late and playing games, or, you know, and then, like, being exhausted the next morning, or eating terribly because I would feel sick, or, you know, lack of time management, or putting more time into my games than into, not like my game design, but my game play, than my actual work, right? So I had to get over that. And I had to really work through it. It was hard. It was really, really hard. But the more I did that, the better I got. And then that's when I started my freelance stuff. And it was actually at that time Python. That's why I always reference this language every now and again. Python is what really made me realize that I wanted to do UX and marketing and business, because I started to see, this is the big thing that I'm going to share with y'all. This is where I really started learning this stuff. When I got that job, that startup gig, and I had a mentor. So I met my mentor there like 14 years ago now. I can't believe it's been 14 years. Just holy crap. I just can't believe it. Oh my God. I started mirroring them. And I never paid attention to how the company worked, right? Like, I never paid attention to that at all. And the thing that really got me was how the company worked. Because I used to think a long time ago that, like, the developers are the ones who made the decision. Like, you'd always hear game companies talk about it that way, or software companies, right? Well, the devs are saying this, and the devs do this, and this is how the devs are focusing on it. This is how the designers are focusing on it. No way, man. No. They don't make the decisions at all. And my first interaction with that was, and I think I wrote like a small thing about it a while ago. There's like an article I did on smunchygames.com, and I talk a little bit about that experience of, like, because I'm an introvert. That's the other thing. So me talking to y'all right now is actually very hard for me to do. And I'm going to be drained after this stream. No one is going to hear from me for like a few like days, unless you're like directly working with me. I mean, I may respond to you on Discord, but like that's my introvertedness. But all that said, after mirroring my mentor, I realized that the way the companies work are not at all how I thought they worked. And I was just like blindsided by everything that came through, and I was like, wait a minute, what is this? What is actually happening? So it was at that time where I learned 3 things. Well, technically there's 4 things, but I kind of pair marketing and sales together. They'd probably stab me if I said that, but or crucify me in some way. But there's really 3 things that run a company. It's business, management and strategy, marketing and sales, and UX. That's it. Everything else is give or take. And I helped them secure a deal with a really big company by the name of Santander, and they're a finance company. And I was working on this tool at the time that like was kind of like a halfway point that connected 2 pieces together in their financial process. And they're like it was a B2C thing, but the B2B side was the customer, so we pulled it in that way. But anyway, I learned all this there. Keep in mind, I'm like 20 years old at the time, maybe a little younger. So I'm like really, really young. And so I'm just learning this all for the first time. And, as I started doing this, we were getting into Python, and I realized that like our business folks were really good. Our marketing and sales people were really good. But we had no UX. UX like was not even a thing. At the time it was called UCD or HCD, known as human-centered design or user-centered design. And UX was a new name that formed like, 10 years ago. But those terms, we didn't have that because they didn't value it. They didn't understand it. And the way I helped them secure that customer was through UX. And I'm like, oh man, we really need this. So I went to my boss at the time and I told her, I was like, I kind of want to switch into this role. And of course, me being silly, thinking, oh, well, they're just going to open up the role for me. And like, they know that they need it, and that helped secure it. And hell no, that did not happen at all. In fact, she was like, we don't need that here at all, ever. We will never have that. And I was like heartbroken, because I was like, you mean to tell me you're going to pay me as a Python developer to do UX for you? And you need it, and the marketing teams need it, the sales teams need it, and business needs it, and the software needs it, but you're going to keep me at like this as a Python dev? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm out. And I quit. So, which, was one of those things where it's hard, because of course I had something lined up though. Like, don't get me wrong, I wasn't foolish. I did have something else lined up, and that was a really painful experience. So that's where like a lot of that, I'm dealing with all my mental things and all my health things and like the family things on top of this. So I was like, okay, I'm done with like Python dev. I'm done doing all this stuff. And I went and got a marketing role. And then I started doing my other freelance stuff. Now my freelance stuff was good. Like, I was able to control that and kind of do the shoestring budget stuff. But that marketing role was like hot garbage. And it was so horrible. I still wish I never did that role. Like, I would say that's kind of a regret. But I have to think about it, and I go, it's okay, because it ended up getting me to where I'm at now. But I was treated horribly. The company was terrible. It was an awful company. But it all came back to because they just didn't understand how these people needed to work in their process. So anyway, all that said, I left that job like after 2 months, and basically I had nothing. And so we're like struggling to survive now on a salary that I never had in my life before, right? So in a very short amount of time, on top of my freelance work, I went from 12,000 a year to 60,000 in one jump, and then I went to 75K, and then with salary income, right? And I'm sitting here going, I need to do something, right? And that's when I ended up securing a role in like DFW area with another company, and it was actually a UX role. It was a real UX role, but that was still hot garbage too. Now, that's at that point though where it started branching out, and I started meeting a lot of new people. I started like really understanding and like doing these things that we're doing now, like pulling out sticky notes and putting them on a board and like figuring out how those things work, and understanding like, okay, I have a very limited budget, right? So like also at that time, so family grew, right? So now not only, so the first one, when I was working with Python, I had my second child, and then when I went to DFW, I had my third child. So now there's 5 of us that I'm supporting, right? And I'm having to really figure this crap out. And yeah, so working off of like, what did I have? I think in total budget left over, I had like $200 after everything was paid and done. So what ended up happening is that's where I started like forming a lot of, my side hustles and the freelance like gigs and securing clients and customers and doing startups. And I started learning that diversifying what I'm doing is going to help me in the long term. And that's what this is. That's what I'm showing you here. So that pain, I had to go through all that pain to figure this out, and that's kind of why I'm sharing this with all of you. I'm hoping that you don't have to go through this pain. Like, when I had that like very rude awakening of how things actually worked, I was like, oh freaking crap. Shoot, why did no one tell me? And there's a lot of assumptions out there, right? There's a lot of assumptions like, oh, well, this is just how it goes. No, that's not true. That's not actually how it works. There's so much more to it. And I'm showing you this because you can do it, but I don't want you to go through that pain. Some people have to, I get it, like, gotta learn the hard way. But if I can save you that pain, then here it is, It's the same thing with tabletop. Like, with tabletop, I'm learning, over the last 7 years, we're hurting as an industry, and I'm noticing it very much. And the partnerships are required. They're needed. Just like this, my Python thing. I knew that UX was going to be the main thing, and here we are 14 years later, and a senior UX director makes $350,000 a year. And they are integrated deeply into all systems of software and apps. You have a mobile phone, you're watching me here on Twitter, you have a senior UX director at Twitch, right? At Amazon. They're hired to help direct the teams that create these things. This is the same thing. This is the calling card. This is my Python thing. Everyone right now is doing this one thing, and they're going, hey, Kickstarter, this is going to be the one thing, this is the only way to do it. No, false, wrong. Because right now we're seeing that you are being essentially gatekeeped. You are being closed off. And there's other ways to do it. There's more viable ways to do it. And in the next many years, it's going to change. It's going to have to, because either let me say it this way, either Kickstarter is going to change or this is going to change. Like, I can't tell the future, right? But I'm very good at seeing the problems where they are and adapting very quickly. So if anything in life right now for me, in the last 14, 15 years, very good at catching the signs early, very good at changing quickly, and making sure things are solid and good to go. And this is one of them. This is a red flag. So hopefully we are able to pull together and help change it. Or I guess I'll see y'all at Wizards of the Coast. That's kind of a joke, sort of. I don't plan on selling. But if you are trying to get in full time, maybe you go and work for them as a job. Um, this is a bad joke, I know, I'm sorry. But there's some truth to it, unfortunately. So, something to think about, you know. All that said, the shoestring budget. So here, I guess I'll kind of like finish out on this. Think about how that can help you. I know that's how we're probably going to tackle this in the long term. We're going to be looking at like Shopify more. We're going to be looking more at Indiegogo, Patreon, Ko-Fi. We're going to be looking more at what these shakers and makers are doing, and how that works with our ecosystem, as well as how ecosystem as in our tabletop ecosystem and industry, as well as how that will help our teams and our products. So that's where it ends, I guess. If you did enjoy this, I mean, I'll do this again. This one was a little more controversial. I don't usually do these things, but I kind of wanted to make it very apparent that, like, no matter what anyone's arguing about right now, there's something much larger happening. And we need to be paying attention to that. And then the second thing is, I just wanted to make sure that I could map this out even for myself, because there's just some things that I'm going to have to take on going forward. So there's some newer things that I'm going to have to do what Priya does here, that are going to require me to make sure that things go through smoothly. So anyway, well, this was a good one. What time is it? It's 1:40. Geez, Central. Holy cow. So I've been doing this since like 10. I didn't even finish my coffee. That's okay. I hope you all have a good rest of the day. I'm glad this was valuable. And feel free to reach out at any time. I am busy, but I will respond. It just takes some time. But I will respond, because I'm not one to not respond. I'm really late sometimes, so if 2 days go by, just know that I'm getting to your message, I promise. I still haven't even answered all my emails, so I don't think I ever will be able to either. I have 6,000, so there's that. But alright, y'all, I'm getting off. And we'll do this again sometime, okay? Alright. See you later. And bye for now.